Hello and welcome to Mumbling with Matt. We are having a very special guest and a very special topic today. We are talking about B and C tier games, which are usually known as the forgotten ones. And with me today, we have the venerable, voluptuous James Small.
Hello.
That's all you got?
That's all I've got. I've got nothing. Venerable and voluptuous? That's amazing.
I'm using voluptuous to describe a lot of people recently, so it's good. B and C tier games, for those that don't know, it is like, again, the forgotten ones, the ones that barely exist anymore. They're hanging by a thread. When you came into my home here, you barged yourself in to talk about these games. You mentioned Strange Brigade.
Yeah.
Which is kind of what we're talking about. And for those that don't know what that is, well, yeah, I mean, look it up. It's the best example of like a modern B and C tier game I can think of now.
Yeah, absolutely.
I don't know about you. But before we're getting a little ahead of myself, James, what do you do? How do you exist?
Well, basically,
what can you talk about?
What can I talk about? Well, I've been working in QA for like the last 14 years or so.
Right.
In fact, it's actually how we met was through QA.
You're wearing your Zangief shirt.
I was wearing my Zangief shirt with the pile drivers for the people.
Coolest guy in the world. He's wearing a Zangief shirt. I didn't know video game shirts existed at that point. I didn't know.
Yeah, I mean, I think I told you the story last time we attempted to record this, but it was actually Street Fighter that got me the job working in video games.
Right.
Because I went out and got drunk with a guy the night before, and he's like, "You like video games? Come apply for a job.
Come work with me."
And I was like, "Yeah, sure, why not?" So I show up with like a baked bean stain on my shirt, massive hangover, and this other guy who was wearing an eye patch for actual medical reasons, interviewed me. And he's going through like the motions of like, oh, you know, what sort of stuff. And eventually he's like, what's your favorite game? And he's wearing like an anniversary edition of Street Fighter t-shirt.
So that's like 2004-ish.
Yeah.
2003.
Yeah. And I was like, well, I was going to say Street Fighter, but like you're wearing a Street Fighter.
On the nose?
It's totally on the nose. So I referenced what we would class as probably a C tier game, although Evo disagrees. Because I said, actually, I really like Samurai Showdown. And then we had a huge talk about Genjuro, Haomaru, you know, all that stuff. And it was like, it was pretty much explained to me.
You talked about the bloody troubles.
But it was explained to me that I pretty much had a job just from, saying that I like Samurai Showdown. So.
You find a game to connect with someone over, even if it's in like a business, like sort of environment like that. It's easy, especially QA.
Yeah.
I think when someone ever asks me about QA and they're like, how do I get into it? It's like, well, you gotta love games.
Yeah.
When you see people in QA and they're like, they don't care, it's like people that are just there for a job and they're like, oh, playing video games is like easy.
Yeah.
You see they don't care, but it's like, if you like, I remember having a conversation with someone about, cause they had a Star Wars game in test, the place I was interviewing at, and they're like, what type of games would we be testing there was like a question that came, like what type of games would you want to be testing? I'm like, and I said, well, you say the thing to try to get you the job, which is I like any games. Like you say, oh, I don't want to play Sims. Those are shit. Like it's not going to work. So I said, action games. And I remember when I walked by one of the doors and the doors were open, I heard Star Wars music. I was like, oh, Star Wars games I'm into as well. And like, the only Star Wars game I was into back then was like maybe Jedi Knight. And no way they would have that. But they were just testing some shitty DS Star Wars game. And I was like, yeah, Star Wars game. And the guy went, huh, okay.
Oh, you put him up the list.
So I wound up on that Star Wars game. I even got asked, what do you want to test? We have 2 things available. Have you ever heard of this happening?
No, tell me.
Like, all right, right now we have an open spot. You can test Star Wars Lethal Alliance or test Totally Spies on the Wii.
So you went for Totally Spies.
I should have. But I went for Lethal Alliance instead. But I should have, because Totally Spies is fucking awesome, but whatever. So yeah, game testing, all good fun. And the thing about game testing is a lot of B and C tier games, especially in the places that you and I used to work, because we worked in places where they had a lot of clients from all over.
Yeah.
So you wouldn't just get like the same types of games and the same type of publishers. So there'd be a lot of stuff. But
my claim to fame was in...
What is your claim to
my
fame?
claim to fame was in 2007. GameSpot did top 10 worst games of 2007.
Ooh.
And I'd worked on 7 of GameSpot's top 10 worst games.
Okay, can you throw a few out?
Jaws Unleashed was one of them.
That's not bad. That was in the place that I used to work. I was in a completely different place, and they had Jaws Unleashed there for some reason.
Yeah, I love that game.
I love that game.
I believe it was Alex Navarro went on a long-winded rant about how Psychonauts only sold 25,000 copies, and somehow Jaws Unleashed had shipped and sold 250,000 copies.
Well, you know, they were striking when the Jaws iron was hot.
Yeah, it's 30 years on.
It's ridiculous. And then they had another Jaws game, Ultimate Predator.
Which we actually played at one point on Billy's old Twitch stream back when it was Justin TV.
You actually played that?
Yeah, you were there.
I was there?
Yeah.
I must have been drunk.
We were.
I don't remember that.
Yeah, because...
Oh, wait, I do remember that.
Yeah, because this was... the way this actually happened was... Billy used to run a Justin TV channel, and I used to show up and get drunk, and we'd play random video games. And then one time, he's like, "Oh, my friend Matt's going to come round," and I was like, "All right." And you brought round Day of Disaster on the Wii, and you were like, "We need to play this game." So we sat down and played through a couple of levels, and it was the first time when I heard you were doing this thing, I was like, that makes sense, because you were extremely charismatic on the show. You were quite drunk, but you were charismatic, and like you were leading it through and enthusiastically playing through this game. And we played some of the Jaws game afterwards. I think it was on the Wii, possibly.
I think it was on the Wii, and there was a 3DS version.
We would have played.
It's
the
called
Wii version.
Ultimate. We would have for sure. But it's called Ultimate Predator, and I remember there being like I tried to get it from a GameStop, and they didn't have it, but they had it online, and it was the one time where I'm like, I'm never using this again. I bought it online. Never showed up to my door.
Motherfuckers.
And then I bought it later. It's terrible. It's way worse than Jaws Unleashed.
Yeah. Jaws Unleashed is good open-ended.
And you know that new one's coming out?
No.
It just without the Jaws license. Maneater?
Oh, I'm down for that.
There was an E3 trailer for this game.
Oh, how did I miss that?
It's coming first to the Epic Games Store exclusively, and then it's I know. But then it's coming out on everything else later. Like there's going to be a Switch version. I'm sure some other versions.
By the way,
for everything
that's not a diss on the Epic Games Store. So I just don't play PC games.
Yeah, okay.
So.
Yeah, fair enough. Because I don't know where everyone stands on the Epic Games Store issue.
Yeah.
As long as they show up on other things later, it's fine.
Yeah, it's all good.
But yeah, Maneater, and like they had an E3 trailer, like had a bad buzz.
Yeah.
And that's all it is. You're just a killer shark killing people.
That sounds fantastic.
Yeah, no, it sounds good.
That's what made Jaws Unleashed amazing.
I love that we got to Jaws games, because that's... Is that even B and C? Is that a D?
This might be Z. Possibly.
Yeah, maybe not Jaws Unleashed, because Jaws Unleashed is violent at least.
Yeah.
The Ultimate Predator Wii game was like rated teen. Like there was no dismemberment, no whatever.
That's part of the whole thing. Pulling a person off his jet ski and then ripping him apart and then dragging his entrails through the water.
I just fathom the madmen that sit in boardrooms going, Jaws, let's go. There was no Jaws remake. There was nothing. Steven Spielberg was like, sure, sign off or whatever. My boom block shit failed, so I might as well just do this.
We'll hopefully make all of the Jaws fans feel true emotion and cry when they witness.
Jaws fans, those are like 80-year-old people. I mean, I like Jaws good enough, but like the Jaws fans, like the ones that buy merch. Anyway, B and C tier games then, what are they in your estimation?
Well, I mean, one of the things I did is I kind of went with the kind of nerdy definition it's good that we mentioned Strange Brigade, which is set in the 1940s, which is where most B-movie definitions came from.
That's true.
Which is the idea that you'd have your A movie, which would have your big superstars, and there was the big thing that pulled
big
people
budget.
in. And then you'd have a B movie, which had, it would be fairly generic, maybe it have something a little bit interesting in it, but nothing major, and people sometimes would come halfway through the B movie and not even watch all of it because they were only there for the A movie.
Right.
But they just needed to fill out an entire slot because of the way people paid for this stuff. Because
you were there all day in the theater.
Yeah. But I mean, also sometimes these movies only lasted 70 minutes.
It's true too.
Yeah. Whereas now movies can last up to like 3 hours.
Yeah, like a really long movie back then was like at 1 hour on the dot.
Yeah,
and like even then, sometimes less than that.
Yeah, exactly. So I mean, one of the things that also happened with the B movie scene is that you'd see people like Martin Scorsese, even Spielberg. They would be under the wing of there's a guy called Roger Corman.
Yeah.
He made
me and Roger are on first name basis.
Oh, for real?
No, we're not.
Oh, I wish you were. That would be so good.
I'm super glad he's still alive.
Yeah, me too. I mean, he made that terrible Fantastic Four movie. Obviously,
I've never actually seen that.
Oh, it's bad.
Yeah.
It's real bad.
That seems up my alley.
But one of the classics he made was Death Race 2000.
Yes.
Which is basically what inspired Carmageddon. Carmageddon, the second Carmageddon was called Carmageddon DR 2000 because it was Death Race 2000 specifically. Right. But what he did is he showed people how to manage budgets and how to like release these B-tier movies.
Cut costs.
Cut costs and understand where to do stuff. And so Spielberg, Scorsese, Coppola is another one. They all learn a ton of stuff from Corman and then end up making these giant blockbusters. So I see that as a lot of things that, I mean, I think we're going to talk about a few games later that are very B-movie that actually allowed certain developers, certain producers to cut their teeth on a much less threatening budget.
Right.
So that when they do come to their true vision, they can actually expand out. They know where to draw the line on features, etc.
A lot of those lessons you can learn are like still applicable on your big budget thing.
Exactly.
Like, and it goes to I wanted to this I mean kind of fits in, but it's like Peter Jackson made I maybe again not even B movies, but like even less than so with like Brain Dead and like
Meet the
Feebles,
Bad Taste,
used a lot of tricks back then and used a lot of those tricks again in Lord of the Rings, like forced perspective and like, just have fucking Elijah Wood really close to the camera and have Ian McKellen all in the back. So it looks like their heights are different when they're not because they'll save us money. We don't have to CG them. And, any director that like, again, cut their teeth on finding these cost saving measures, like, can definitely apply it to stuff. And like to games, I never really considered that would work, but it totally would.
It would be basically, there's a thing called triage.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I'm going to drop a name. I worked on a game that a few people might know that I worked on. It's called Minecraft. It's a little game, like no one really knows it. But I worked on that for like 2.5 years.
How do you pronounce that? Minecraft?
It's Minecraft. Yeah, you've got to really like roll that R like, in an English style.
I don't know. Continue.
Yeah. Anyway, no one really plays it, to be honest. But one of the things that you learn there is things like triage. And triage is super important because what you're doing is deciding what bugs you fix and what you don't. And I was doing that way before on much smaller projects that were really not important. But the things that I learned from those smaller projects, we was able to apply the same logic to things like Minecraft.
Right.
The annoying thing, I think I'm on Moby Games in credits for the only version of Minecraft I didn't work on.
Oh, really?
Which is like the PS4 version or something. I think it's a PS3 or PS4 version I'm crediting.
It came out on everything. It came out on Netflix.
Well, there's the Minecraft Adventures. Yeah. But yeah, so I mean, that's what I think B games are all about, is about people being able to explore and play around with ideas, like you mentioned with Peter Jackson and like him doing, experimenting with gore and puppets and all kind of practical effects and then reapplying them later. But also at the same time, it can sometimes just be a massive afterthought by a company that's just trying to spend some money and get their tax refund on it. So,
and they would look at whatever's popular, let's just pull from that, but just make it on like 80% less the budget. And that's the other like grouping of B and C tier games. Like
completely.
It's really nice that you mentioned that bit where it's like someone that goes, because that goes like, I want to make something, but like, let's style it back, like in terms of ambition, whatever, but I still have an idea or I still have something. And like, it's a really weird space because when I think about it, I don't even think about it in the 8-bit era, maybe a little bit in the 16-bit era, but like these types of games that we're going to talk about, it's like I really felt that they came to a head where it's like the maximum amount of them released were like on the PS2, the GameCube, and the Xbox. There are so many like bizarre, like why, like Circus Maximus? Why would you think that? I would never think that game would be on a 16-bit console. But it makes sense to me that it was there as an Xbox exclusive launch title or whatever. And that's like, I was telling you before about going to a game store, and I'm like, that's where like my laser focus is. Like, I don't care about NES games. I don't care about Genesis games. I care about PS2, Xbox, and GameCube games because there's still uncovered ones, and that's where like this tier really kind of flourished. Do you feel the same?
Yeah, I would agree, definitely. Okay. Well, I feel like there was still some stuff on the 360.
Oh, absolutely, but
I think it also had to do with availability. But so what happened is, for example, like, have you ever heard of a game called Pokicopter?
No, that sounds like the most James Small thing I've heard of today.
All right, so Pokicopter was...
no Pen Racing.
Pen Racing is one of the greatest games I've ever played.
Let's focus on Poochie.
Okay, but Pokicopter came out on the original Xbox, Japan only release.
Oh, shit, wow.
And so there was when we played it, and it was bad, there was still a sort of semi-fetishization to it. There was still a thing of the idea of like physical copies of games kind of only existed in their own realms. I mean, the classic example of this obviously is things like Metal Wolf Chaos. Let's party! Which is a Xbox exclusive, only released in Japan, which is the worst market for it.
The only other thing you could do is get that one Xbox Magazine preview disc that had a demo of it, and that's it. That was it for us.
So a lot of those games kind of then sort of took on a legend of their own. I mean, I think we're going to talk about a few of them that have I think they've definitely taken on their legend of their own from the 8-bit and 16-bit period. But in the PS2 and Xbox sort of era, magazines were staring at a lot of these export games and looking at all these other things and going, oh, what's going on over here? Kind of thing. And I think that's what increased a lot of the mystique of some of those B-class games.
Like, the PS2 obviously had like, huge Japanese presence and had like a lot of games. And sometimes I try really hard to find, like, I know the specific list. If you just put this into Google, it'll pop up. It's like non-anime, and when it says anime, it means like, dating sims, like any anime that just never got localized for North America, like non-anime Japanese only PS2 games. So anything of the action realm, anything you might not know, and it's just like there's so many like of those types of games, like dating sims again, or just, that type of stuff. But the Xbox was so weird because very few of those anime games got released on the Xbox for obvious reasons, but there was still a bunch of weird Japanese only Xbox games. I'll talk about one of them in particular later myself, because there's one, because going down our docket, James has a few of special games he wants to mention, but there's like, I thought of like the one, I'm like, no, I just want to talk about this one game because it's so weird. No, we'll get to it later.
When we do it chronologically, then.
Yeah. Okay, so that is what they are. I think that runs a good canvas over what we want to talk about. So do you want to go into specific games from the different eras? Or
I'd like
how do
to
you
do that,
feel?
yeah.
Okay.
I mean, especially as the first one on the list, which we'd already talked about previously in the failed Bangkok to Canada
Skype
recording.
call. Skype and Discord both failed us.
So yeah, I really like the reason that you put this on, and I've added a little bit of extra information, which makes me even more excited to one day play this game.
Right.
So
that would be Clash of Demonhead.
Yes.
When I think about again, I said the NES era was kind of like, I don't think about that. Like your mind instantly goes to like, Mario and Zelda, and then there's like, the lesser ones. But you just think about how many like companies grew out of that era. So like Capcom, like Mega Man, Konami, Castlevania, and then there's just like one or two where I'm like, yes, that's exactly that example from that era, and that is Clash of Demonhead. by Tokai Communications. Vic Tokai, also commonly known as, and Clash of Demonhead is like, it has a lot more play nowadays, but, maybe, 20 years ago it didn't because, got a little popularized by Scott Pilgrim. But Clash of Demonhead was a game that was like, wasn't amazing, but had a really, really fun localization. Whoever localized that thing was like ahead of the curve. It was actually funny. It was a funny game, and your main character, God, what was his name though? The main character, damn, Bang. His name was Bang. Yes. Thank you, Derek from Stop Skeletons from Fighting for allowing me to remember that. Bang. And he was just over the top bravado Japanese hero. And it, like, when you would have conversations between characters, they'd have a little subtitle saying what is the gameplay that's happening right now, and it's called talking time. Okay. Whenever you're talking to a character, it's called talking time. And it had a very complicated map, and you're just zipping around all over, and you're like, how the hell do I play this? It wasn't really tested that well about, like, how does someone, like, it's not like a Zelda game or Mario game, it's very straightforward. I mean, even Zelda's more straightforward as open as that game was, but, like, Clash of Demonhead is also a money name.
It's such a good name.
That's why a band called themselves after that. Yeah. So that is like my prime of that era of games. Like Clash of Demonhead sticks out. I mean, there's some others too. I mean, everyone kind of probably has one or two, but in terms of name recognition, like that's the one that stands out to me on the NES.
What I also love about this is that if you want to talk about money names as well, in my opinion, they're the same team made Clash of Demonhead, also made Decap Attack.
Yes.
Which is like, as soon as I saw that...
Was that NES or Genesis?
That was a Genesis game.
Yes, it was Genesis, okay.
But I remember seeing that in a store in America.
Yeah, it's bizarre, the game.
Yeah, it's very weird, very creepy game. You're like throwing your skull, or you have your head is in your chest, and you punch people
as you do.
Head. Yeah, and then you can pick up a skull, which you can throw, and it's got like a real good art style. But like, it pleases me that they both not only had Clash of Demonhead, but also Decap Attack.
Sega would never publish that. Like, as their own game, Nintendo would never publish that. That is a developer just going,
this
fuck
is what I want to do. Yeah.
This is what I want. I had a dream one night, a fever dream of a game character throwing his skull out of his own chest. That's what we're going to do. I've never played Decap Attack, but I have played Psycho Fox.
Oh my god. Yeah.
What is with this company? That's crazy. So again, B and C tier games sometimes can be absolutely crazy or absolutely mundane. Mm-hmm. The contrast between the two is palatable.
It's great.
So next we have Snow Bros on the NES, developed by Toplan?
I don't know how to pronounce it. I always said Toaplan.
I was debating. It was a 50-50 shot.
Yeah.
And it was also, I think it was published by Capcom as well.
Capcom would have done the arcade
version?
Yeah,
okay.
Sol published the NES release.
Right.
But yeah, Capcom did all of the... Because I remember it very vividly, because I used to go to a Slide and Splash, which was like a slide park. And while all of my friends were going and jumping on the slides, I was in the arcades playing Snow Brothers.
As you should.
Exactly.
I played Snow Bros a hell of a lot on the NES, and... it was just like one of those quick arcadey style games because it was just like, stage after stage after stage and just going up. And like, it's kind of like the maze that you're in. It's kind of like, a Mario Brothers style maze. But like, those are characters that are never coming back anywhere. Like, they are not built to last, but still super cool.
And they were also, you have to be honest, they were also a rip-off of Bubble Bobble.
Yeah, and you could say Mario Brothers as well, just because Snow Bros.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
I think they were both blue and red, even.
They've definitely at least got work coveralls on, I seem to remember.
Just the snowman. It's like, I don't want me just hanging out there. I need to wear coveralls. It's like Jack Frost, where they're a human that's turned into a snowman, maybe. Snow Bros is another strong one.
And then their legacy is incredible, because they're probably even more famous than Snow Brothers was Zero Wing,
right.
Which is the classic All Your Base Are Belong to Us, which
course.
is now used everywhere.
So James has written... then they split into members of Cave to make some of the greatest bullet hell shooters. That's true?
That is true.
That's not something you just put in.
No, that's a real thing. That's
crazy.
I mean, that's me finding that out on Wikipedia.
Right.
And just like clicking through, going down through the rabbit hole.
Fair enough.
But yeah, I mean, they went on to better and better things.
and sometimes that happens where, like, a legendary team within Konami became Treasure.
Yeah.
And Treasure's like weird because they kind of make B and C tier games.
Yeah.
But they're not.
Yeah.
Or like a lot of them aren't. Like they're absolute classic legendary games. But like since they didn't have the backing of like and they were just a developer, they have their things published.
Yeah.
So Nintendo will publish some, Sega will publish some. So like
I would almost argue that Cave is like the original Francis Ford Coppola of like video games.
That's so specific.
Well, if you think about it, because Coppola's first movie was Drag Strip Girl, I think.
Okay,
where he was like second director of cinematography or something. It's something I'd have to look this up. Don't like harass Matt about this when I get this wrong.
Like James Cameron directed Piranha 2.
Exactly.
You know?
And I think that's kind of the thing where these Toa Plan are like cutting their teeth on Snow Brothers and eventually go on to define a genre in many ways.
Define a genre.
Well, Francis Ford Coppola with gangster movies.
Yeah. No. I'm just saying, like it's such a realization that it's like you can totally go on to define a genre, even if your beginnings are somewhat humble, and they can't be more humble than Snow Brothers. Next, we have Green Dog, which we had a discussion about this before. It was a game I was like, no, that's a made-up name. I've never heard of that. But when I looked it up, I'm like, I've seen this guy before. The name just did not register. What is Green Dog? Okay,
the full title obviously is Green Dog, the Beached Surfer Dude. It was actually the full name. You actually pointed out is actually published by a sub-team of Sega. They were like the American version of like the American representatives of the Sega development teams.
Right. I'd imagine it's the same group that published like Eternal Champions or one of those or like Vector Man even.
Yeah, but also they were also their Japanese counterparts were making Sonic while they were making these games. And the thing about Green Dog is it's actually it's a bad game. It's like a really bad game, but it stuck with me because the soundtrack is so kick-ass. I absolutely love the soundtrack. But also, it was one of those ones you could put on and sit down and play through in like 2 hours. You get through the whole game. It was really exploitable. But I was in that kind of attitude era of like Sega, where Sega's got like, they're being
Green Dog.
Yeah, exactly. But they were like phonetic translations of how a surfer dude would say each of the West Indian islands and stuff like that in the actual booklet, so you could actually like play along with what he was saying, kind of thing. I mean, it was an awful game, but it just.
But there was a lot of heart and charm there.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
Like someone put an effort. I think Mark Cerny worked on it.
God. When I look back on Mark Cerny's career, I'm like, he made Sonic 2, and I like that. That's like I only learned that like 2 or 3 years ago. It was like Sonic 2 was made in America. They just flew a couple of Sega Japan members there, and it was an East and West collaboration.
Yeah,
and I'm like, I'm just gonna say it out there: the greatest Sonic game.
I'd be inclined to agree with you.
Okay, good, because I'd kick you out otherwise. The greatest Sonic game made by like this collaboration that, especially back then, should not have worked.
Exactly.
And I read a really long retrospective in Retro Gamer magazine about like they got Mark Cerny to talk about it years and years, 25 years later, and he's like, yeah, it was rough, it wasn't the easiest, a lot of things went wrong, a lot of like zones were cut from Sonic 2, and it's just incredible that Mark Cerny's career, like Green Dog to Sonic 2 to like almost running PlayStation right now.
Exactly.
So that's incredible.
I mean, and again, just to kind of give that a perspective, if you think about the way that Call of Duty is made, you have your A team, which is now no longer the A team, and then your B team, Treyarch, who've been making like the knockoffs, like Call of Duty 3, the big red one on the original Xbox.
That's the weirdest title. That always freaked me out. I'm like, what is...
Do you know why it's called the Big Red One? Okay, there's a movie called The Big Red One, which was with starring Lee Marvin and Mark Hamill from the 80s, which is a World War II movie. And it's actually based on a true story because they were the first division or something like that, and they were called the Big Red One.
Okay, there you go.
And that's why Call of Duty, the Big Red One, is a reference to essentially that.
Okay. That, I always wondered that. That's such a weird thing for us to establish here. But, Treyarch, then, wait,
Well, I would consider Treyarch to be the A team now. Like, Treyarch are the guys, I mean, they made Spider-Man 2, but then they became the guys who made the off-season Call of Duty every year.
But then who was making the A ones back then?
It's Zampella's old team.
Oh, Infinity Ward. I forgot them because they don't exist anymore.
Well, they do. They do exist.
I haven't heard their name in a long time.
Exactly, because they've been pushed to... Now everyone's focused on what Treyarch's fleeting, and Infinity Ward is like the guys who now kind of make the B-tier Call of Duty.
This might be weird, but I used to follow Call of Duty in the sense that I knew which game was coming from who. I'm like, oh, this is made by Sledgehammer, that new team. Do they still exist?
They still exist, I think. Yeah, I think they still do exist, yeah.
Because then they had 3 teams. They had Treyarch, Infinity Ward, and like Infinity Ward, but then Infinity Ward closed?
No. Zampella left. Zampella
and then
West
they have
left.
Respawn now.
They have Respawn, but Infinity Ward still exists.
Okay.
As far as I know.
Anyway.
But yeah. But that's what I mean, like the whole team with Mark Cerny making Green Dog over here and then coming over and helping out with Sonic 2 and building that. It's kind of a fascinating thing that the industry has changed so much but stayed the same in so many other respects. Yeah. I don't think we need to talk about the next game, although it is very funny to hear that Naughty Dog made a giant, impossible to understand RPG as one of their first games ever.
Which was what?
Rings of Power.
I didn't, because I consider myself an expert on Naughty Dog's previous embarrassments, because my always go-to is Way of the Warrior on 3DO.
Which they used the money from Rings of Power to make.
And which, therefore, they used that money to make, Skeleton Warriors, and then use that money to make Crash Bandicoot. God.
I've played a lot of Skeleton Warriors, I'll be honest.
I have too. That's like Naughty Dog is absolutely like, let's just talk about it right now. It's like that is one of the most you are now one of the most AAA pedigreed developers. All your shit wins all the awards. You made Way of the Warrior and
I would argue,
Rings of Power.
I would argue that they're the Spielberg of the Spielberg, because I would say Rings of Power was their duel.
Really?
Yeah. Rings of Power is a very interesting...
So what's their Jaws?
What's their Jaws?
Crash Bandicoot?
Crash Bandicoot,
yeah,
definitely.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah. And
then Jurassic Park is Jack and Daxter.
Yes, for sure. And but then obviously...
And Last of Us is their Schindler's List.
No, I was going to say Ready Player One, but
But what's their Uncharted? What's Spielberg's Uncharted?
Spielberg's Uncharted.
Indiana Jones?
That's too... Well, it has to be, because that's a direct correlation, isn't it? Even if the chronology doesn't work.
Uncharted would not exist if Indiana Jones didn't exist.
Exactly.
Uncharted wouldn't exist if Tomb Raider didn't, but Tomb Raider only exists because
of Indiana Jones. So yeah, no, Uncharted's there, Indiana Jones.
Oh, my blood is boiling right now. That's really fun. I've never played Rings of Power. What's it on?
It's only on the Mega Drive.
Okay, I've heard of it. I've never played of it.
But basically, what happened was, I read into this. I picked it up from a store for about 1,000 escudos in Portugal, which would have been about £4 at the time. So very, very cheap. And I started to play it. It's completely confusing. It has hundreds of characters. All of them, you're basically trying to collect, I think it's 7 or 8 rings of power to unify them to then defeat a boss.
And then bind them.
Yeah, but one of the rings that you're looking for, you go and talk to a person in a house. And then you go off and do other stuff, and you have to go back to exactly the same house, and they will fall down the stairs. And then you have to go and talk to them again, and they turn into one of the rings. I remember that being something in it. Now, bear in mind, this is pre-Morrowind, but the world map is huge. So something that specific in that game, I never finished it. It was utterly baffling. The combat was really difficult as well. Very sluggish controls, but it was really, really ambitious. They meant to put it out on PC, but EA turned around to them and said, no, we've heard the consoles are more popular, port this to Genesis.
This was pretty early on then.
This is one of their first games.
But this is 91, 92?
It's very early, yeah. I would have been 12, 13 when it came
out. Correction, Naughty Dog did not make Skeleton Warriors. That was Neversoft.
Oh, that game's still great. It
is. We're not taking anything away from Skeleton Warriors. And I was just wait, no, it was Neversoft. Because I remember Neversoft, we're oh, we need to make like some type of success. Let's just do anything. Let's make Skeleton Warriors. Oh shit, now we have a little bit of money. Let's make Tony Hawk. So
yeah, okay.
I want to correct myself there.
Yeah, so you don't end up getting angry emails. From
yeah,
fans.
Exactly.
People sliding into your DMs with just nothing but abuse.
and I should know my Skeleton Warriors. Do we want to talk about... I think you want to talk about Vector Man.
I think we should. Yeah.
But the thing with Vector Man is that Sega pushed it hard. They pushed it to be, like, not a C game, but it kind of was.
I think it was because of the sensibilities, because it wasn't very accessible. One of the things that I discovered about Vector Man when I went back to it, where I kind of didn't blink at all when I was playing it the first time.
It's not an easy game.
It's a very hard game.
Because that Sega Collection came out on the Switch not too long ago, like a month ago, and I was like, let me get this.
Yeah.
And while that game's UI and everything designed about it is kind of clunky, not great, I mean, like, this is still a really good collection of games. And yeah, I was like, oh, let me give it Vector Man a go. And I was like, wow, this is like maybe not Contra levels, but it's up there. It's not
And it was deliberately aimed as like, hey, if you like Sonic, you'll like this. And
it's fast robot.
Yeah, exactly. And it was brutally hard. And I think you argued as well, the reason that Vector Man really exists is as a kind of like a Me Too of sort of things of like, hey, we need to throw out another platformer here. And
yeah, because it's the tail end of the Genesis's life, and they were like, well, this graphical technique looks pretty impressive, and it does. Like the second game looks like even better than the first one, and they made that really fast. That sequel.
Yeah,
I don't think it's as well. And I didn't play the second one enough, but it's because it's like. Vector Man needs to be in like a Sega All-Stars racing game or a new tennis game, something. Because like I do, you made two of them.
Yeah,
that's enough for him to be back. But like, it's still like at the time, like 94, 95. I was like, really, Vector Man?
And I think it was also a bit of a response to the idea of the advent of 3D. Because Vector Man, do you remember there was a game called Balls? B-A-L-L-Z.
Yeah.
The fighting game.
Oh, yeah. It had some of the worst music ever. Yeah, it was Balls. It was just... I read something about the developer, like, we had no idea what a fighting game was.
Yeah.
We don't know how they worked, but we knew how to make this graphical effect.
Yeah.
And they were just like, make a fighting game with it.
Yeah. I mean, because there was the Sonic 3D Blast, there was Vector Man, and there was Balls that all came out on the
Who made
Genesis.
Sonic 3D Blast?
I cannot remember.
Traveler's Tales.
Are you kidding?
Yeah, no.
Wow. They have definitely improved it. But yeah, I think all of those were kind of Sega's like, oh, we don't really have anything, but let's mess around with 3D on a console that can't handle it.
That really can't handle it.
Yeah, and I think that was them being in response to the time.
I always wonder why Genesis games never, I'm assuming they could, but it's like Super Nintendo games got those special chips, like the FX chip, and then there's the SA1A chip that like ran Street Fighter Alpha 2 that just could do more. And I was like always wondering, like, was it possible? I assume it was because it was a chip inside the game cartridge to kind of expand it. Because virtual racing was on the Genesis.
It was indeed,
and that was 3D.
Yeah, but it was not
bad 3D.
It was not the same as the proper version.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, they played a lot of tricks because they actually released Virtua Fighter 2 on the Mega Drive.
The best version of it.
I love the fact that you almost kept a straight face.
I did for a second to see what your reaction would be. I fucking love that version because that is a B or that's a Z tier game where they're like, we tried really hard. We didn't get so far, and in the end, it didn't really matter. That's just amazing. Just the sheer ambition of it is.
Well,
is
you know what their philosophy behind the Genesis and the Saturn was. Like what they viewed is that what they were going to do is add more stuff to the Saturn. Add more stuff to the Genesis Mega Drive, and that would be the thing that people would stick with. And it would only be hardcore gamers that would switch to the Saturn.
That are like, I need to pay the money right now.
Yeah, and I want to do something. And so that's why the 32X and the Mega CD and all that stuff was add on, because they were like, oh, we're going to extend the life and put some extra stuff on, and people will stay with this one. And then with the like extremely violent response towards purchasing it was aggressive. People was like, we want the new shit. And Sega were just way behind on the curve. But that's, I guess, why that's things like Virtua Fighter 2 did come out on the Mega Drive, is because they were still like, oh no, so many people have these.
Not one, two.
Just two. Well, it had Shun in it, so that makes sense.
it's still the fact that you would try 2. Why not just do 1? Like, I guess because 1 was old hat at that time, but really, really quickly, just because it reminds me of it, it's that transition between consoles. One of my that would have been so cool. Why not? And it was like, well, Nintendo had a different view of it. Like, we don't want one thing kind of overlapping on the other. We want a clear divide. Stop buying stuff for this. Start buying stuff for this. So between the Super Nintendo and the N64, they had Rareware work on a Super Nintendo version of Killer Instinct 2.
Oh, that would have been fun.
That got 85% complete. The game was done. And they were doing this because they were like, we still don't really have the final, N64 dev kits. It's taking forever. Let's just make this in the meantime. And, I've just read interviews with Rare staff that worked on, they're like, we were able to squeeze even more out of the Super, it would look a lot better than the Super Nintendo version of Killer Instinct 1. And Nintendo eventually said, we don't want this kind of treading over the N64 because it was going to release in late 96 or even early 97 on the Super Nintendo. And they're like, we want people to buy the N64, stop making good games for it. And it's a lot like Star Fox 2 for the Super Nintendo that got canceled because they're like, well, we want people to buy Star Fox 64. We don't want that overlap in there. And while Star Fox can, certainly be considered a really good, Killer Instinct, especially the Nintendo Rareware versions of it, never amazing fighting games. Never, they're always kind of junky to me, even back then. But they had so much, bravado and, charm and, stupid 90s over the topness that it always goes oh, this is a tier below Street Fighter, even Mortal Kombat, I kind of think. And, they asked Rare employees, does a ROM exist anywhere? They're like, no, we looked at the old offices. So there's not a screenshot. It's my holy grail of games because I'm like, is 85% complete? It's not just when they're like, oh, there's a couple of concept arts hanging around. I'm like, that's such a shame. Damn it.
All right, well, I mean, I think you're the one who brought the next one up, and because I actually never played this game.
I'm shocked you haven't. Zero the Kamikaze Squirrel, which is the most Me Too mascot ever. It's the most, I'm trying to be Sonic, but it was a good game, and it was developed by Iguana Entertainment, which went on to make Turok and stuff. And Sunsoft. Sunsoft was, again, one of those companies that just kind of existed, not even near Capcom's level. I'd categorize them as a B publisher for sure. And as kind of any kid that, especially when I would go to my video store and I'd see Zero the Kamikaze Squirrel, had this bad 3D render. They didn't even have a painter draw a picture. It was a bad 3D render of Zero. He was an acrobat. This was called Zero the Acrobat.
Right.
And he would be a dick.
Isn't that Aero the Acrobat?
Wait, sorry. Zero the Kamikaze Squirrel is a spin-off of that universe.
Okay.
I think it was even made by the same team. But Aero the Acrobat is a different thing. Zero the Kamikaze Squirrel was a squirrel that was kind of doing Japanese-style martial arts, but he's kamikaze. So he had the headband with the red sun and everything. And I think he had nunchucks. So this is a spin-off of a spin-off mascot character that was meant to be Sonic. I didn't put Zero the...
Aero.
Aero. God, I see Aero the Acrobat. I'm getting all my bad mascots mixed up. And that, to me, at that time, at that age, I was like, this is a lower tier game.
Yeah.
You just knew. And after that, I mean, this is rough because Alien Soldier, sir, is that... Because we were talking about Treasure before.
Yeah, but it is, though. Because the thing about
that character is unmarketable.
Yeah. It's a weird
bird man.
Yeah, like a bird creature thing. Because the thing is, though, Gunstar Heroes, which I think they released first, didn't they?
Sega hated that game. They did not want to release it.
Wow.
I read a thing that they needed to get approval from a board of directors. There's one guy, especially from the American side, there's one guy that's like, I hate this game. I do not want to release it. And they needed a unanimous vote to let the game go. And I think they went a brouhaha with the name, and eventually the guy relented and said, okay, fine.
Yeah.
And then Gunstar Heroes got released.
Wow.
It's just...
Because from my perspective, I remember being a kid when Gunstar Heroes came out, and I was like, I need to own this game. Mm-hmm. But then Alien Soldier came out, and I didn't have the same kind of brand recognition of understanding that Treasure had made Gunstar Heroes. And I just looked at that cover, and I was like, no, I'm not going to play that. Ever. I mean, that was my mistake, and also that was a lie. I played it about 10 years later. But yeah, for me, that was a thing. Like, it was a great game, but it is like one of those things of like, you look at it and it's just, it gets sent out. It's the Beyond Skyline of
that's a pull.
I love.
You had that in your back pocket, did you?
Oh man, Beyond Skyline, one of the greatest movies of 2018.
There's multiple, or is it just the one?
There's Skyline, and then there's the sequel, Beyond Skyline,
of course,
which has a guest star of the main guy from The Raid in it.
Really?
Yeah, Iko Uwais.
But doesn't it have the guy
Frank Grillo?
Frank Grillo, Crossbones, yes. and in every other action movie,
and The Purge. Yeah,
nice. That is a BC tier man. That guy.
He takes his topics very seriously, even though he knows they're complete shit.
No, he does. He comes to work every day.
Indeed.
Alien Soldier is also a game that's the first thing that I was like, this is an import game, because the back of an EGM, they say screenshots and they would just say Alien Soldier, and it's like it would just have the big Japanese flag, just saying you knew you'll never play this. And I'm like, oh, and I would look at the screenshots, and even with the character, as small as the screenshots were, I'm like, I could see the character was weird. I'm like, this is some weird bird man. That's so strange. And I was like, I guess I'll never play this. And I think the first time I actually did was when it came out in the Wii shop as a Japanese title.
Oh, because they released it in Europe. They actually released it in Europe.
Yes, it did, but I did not live there.
Oh, for
of course you would. So that makes more sense. But I remember playing that by myself, and then Wooly was like, "Oh, I need to play this game to redeem myself." That was a trip, because I'd never seen the full game until that time, because I'd play, because it was a hard game too. It was one of those ones you really had to memorize. Man, Alien Soldier. And now, okay, did you write Bob or did I?
You wrote Bob.
Okay, I don't want to talk about Bob, because that's more of a meme game that Liam likes to bring up.
All right, well, we'll skip to the next one, which you also brought up.
I'll talk about Phantom 2040. Phantom 2040 is based on the Phantom movie franchise, or the comic book franchise, I think it started.
It's actually on the cartoon franchise, because they're using the same artwork.
It does.
Because the guy who worked on Aeon Flux did the artwork for the Phantom cartoon.
Shut up.
Yes.
The movie starred Billy Zane. Didn't go anywhere. Didn't launch his career, really. But the game was one of those games where I'm like, I'll just rent this. And it's tough. It's not the best, but it had so many weapons. Your character had a grappling hook and all these different guns, and they're the big expansive levels that are a giant square. Yeah. You just find your way around them. It was like that. And I remember playing it and not being really into it. I'm like, oh, I'm about to return this. I played a little bit more, and now I see it come up in underrated 16-bit games. And Viacom News Media is the publisher, and
developer, apparently.
Developer as well. And there are a couple of those developers, I'm like, what the fuck is this? Sony Image Soft. There are a couple developer logos, I'm like, I'm not into that. I don't really like that. I don't know what it is. Either the fact that I know this is when it said Virgin, from the record company, I'm like, what is that? They don't make video games. I don't like that.
Wow, really?
Yeah,
it's the opposite for me.
But then I would go on to play their incredible
they made the first Terminator game, and
but they made some good Disney games too.
They made fantastic. I think they were behind Lion King.
I think so too.
The very good Lion King Mega Drive version.
Yeah,
which could cause an argument. I know some people get divided on that.
For Lion King, or
is it Aladdin that people get upset about when people choose sides?
I mean, I get upset about that. Lion King, I don't, because I think Shinji Mikami, creator of Resident Evil, did a fine job on Super Nintendo Aladdin. And I don't like Aladdin swinging a sword. He never swung a sword in the movie. He should not swing a sword. But that's neither here nor there. Phantom 2040 is like one of those standouts on the Super Nintendo and Genesis, because I remember playing it on my friend's Genesis first. I've seen it a little bit, and then I was like, oh, I'm going to rent this when I see it next time. So I have next, we're moving into a different era, Armorines on the N64. Armorines?
Armorines.
Armorines?
Yeah.
Have you ever played this?
I have never, ever played this. I am so curious about what this game's about.
This is like, we found success with Turok. What other things can we do? So I think it uses the Turok engine, and you're just up... James, do you like a bunch of armored heroes with guns shooting giant insects?
Yes, I do.
Because that's what Armorines is.
How would you even guess that I might like that?
Because I looked down further in the docket. So that's what it is. And I think there was a PlayStation 1 version, and it was just like one of those things where Acclaim, when they bought that comic book company, that's why Shadow Man and Turok even were in their stable,
right?
And they just were like, oh, this too, let's try this, maybe this will hit, and it did not.
Yeah.
And it just kind of was like, it was there, it was a very flash in the pan sort of thing. It just showed up, and it was like, ooh, it's kind of like Turok, but not as good or as interesting or whatever. And then just kind of died. It didn't do anything with, like, Shadow Man was lucky that it got a sequel on the PS2. Have I ever talked to you about, which one was it? Which Acclaim UK bad marketing stunt was this? Now I always mix this up. There was bloodvertising, and then there was putting Shadow Man on your gravestone when you die.
Oh god, I can't remember. I do know the opening of Shadow Man made me really upset, because they actually named the actual people that Jack the Ripper murdered.
Yes.
And they really went hard.
They went hard on that.
And I was like, is this a good thing? I'm not sure this is a good thing. I kind of like it, but I also feel like maybe this is inappropriate for a voodoo priest to be, investigating the murders of Jack the Ripper.
Because I think it was Shadow Man, because it's like all, death and stuff. It was like Acclaim UK said, take your loved one's grave and sell it to us for advertising space.
Wow.
Do you not know this?
That's an amazing decision.
And this is only Acclaim UK, specifically.
This is like when EA said molest booth girls for Dante's Inferno.
Shut up.
Do you not hear about this? The acts of lust. Perform an act of lust with a booth babe to show your support of Dante's Inferno.
It's not great. Okay, shit. I'm so glad this isn't about Shadow Man. This is about another C tier game. Gladiator Sword of Vengeance.
Oh god, yes, I remember that. They came out the same time as the LucasArts made game Gladius, which was like a turbo.
It was confusion.
Game. Yeah.
The bloodiest video game ever. The UK promotion will include advertisements in bus shelters. Cartridges of red dye will be placed behind clear sheets of film and slowly released over a 6-day period. The blood will slowly appear to spill out onto the streets and drip into the pavements. Acclaim had to spend so much money cleaning up the blood afterwards.
Yeah, that sounds like something Acclaim UK would do.
This continues Acclaim UK's increasingly desperate series of publicity stunts, including spray painting pigeons.
Yeah.
I don't know for what game.
I don't know what that's from either. But
anyway, that's fun regardless. Gladiator Sword of Vengeance got a port onto Steam like a year ago. Like it's as ported as you can be. Like they tried like stretch it by 16:9, like high resolutions, and it's still like it's a very interesting game because it's like it's primarily a God of War ripoff,
right?
But it takes parts of the Greek mythology or Roman mythology rather that a God of War never touched, like you meet the babies, Romulus and Remus, and they're suckling at the teats of the wolf. And they talk to your character who has died, and he's in Elysium. Okay. But the game is bad, but it's so good.
It's so mental.
It's, again, when I talked about the PS2, GameCube, Xbox era, like this was one of those.
We should, if we want to talk about God of War ripoffs, we should talk about a B-tier game later on when we get to the Xbox section, if we have time.
Yeah.
But anyway...
You have Bug.
I have Bug, okay.
Bug is one. I've never played Bug, but I know Bug.
Okay, so Bug was one of the games, that and Clockwork Knight, that came out on the Sega Saturn. That Sega fans were like, see, we don't need Mario 64. We have Bug and Clockwork Knight. And every Nintendo fan like, that's not true. You definitely do need Mario 64 and not these games. Bug is a weird one because it was clearly a team trying to figure out how to do 3D without completely breaking the console. Mm-hmm. And so it's all quite 2.5D. You walk in and out.
Like, it's the most 2.5D thing.
But actually, as a platformer, it's very, like, playable. It's just not very exciting. I played it on PC eventually, because they actually did a PC port for it.
I did not know that.
In the sold out category. And I played it there the most. And I actually like, this really works. But it's just not Mario 64. It's just something that they built almost primarily in response to the fact that Nintendo had a 3D engine that worked. Mm-hmm. And there was some nice little ideas there. They made a Bug 2, but obviously it was Bug TOO, Bug 2.
Bug 2!
Yeah, and that actually ran better, was more interesting. I think the problem...
Was it more 3D? Is it still 2.5D?
It was still pretty much 2.5D.
Why start shattering the mold now?
Yeah. If it's broken, keep it broken.
yeah. There's no reason not to. You're a Bug at the end of the day. But, I mean, I guess the first one was... I had the vaguest memory of a Bug 2. I only really remembered it because you even mentioned it. But I'm like, I guess the first one did okay for a sequel to be greenlit.
Yeah, because people like me were like, well, this is the only thing we've got on Saturn, so we'll just play that instead.
So I see down here you have that it was developed by Real-Time Associates and Beam Software. And here's the interesting part to me. Beam Software was originally known as Chrome Studios and then became Chrome Studios again and made lots of bullshit. Like Hellboy, the Science of Evil, Ty the Tasmanian Tiger.
All three of them.
And Star Wars The Force Unleashed on PS2 and Wii, which I have been told by fans that they're the best versions of Star Wars The Force Unleashed.
I would be inclined to agree, yeah.
Because I played Star Wars The Force Unleashed 2, which was made by a different developer, Red Fly Studios, who made Mushroom Men, games of that ilk. And I thought that was a cool version, but I never played the first one, and I didn't know that it was made by Chrome. I thought Red Fly had done both. It just made sense to me, but I might have to try that out. But, like, Chrome Studios. Like... They employed half of Australia.
Yeah, at one point, yeah.
Super sad that they died. Next we have, Project Winback on the N64 is kind of what we were talking about before. They're like, let's make Metal Gear Solid. But we're not as good as that.
Mr. Secretary, we don't have much time. Have you considered sending in the army?
They'd never make it in time. Those damn flying lions would hit us before we even got moving.
I believe it was the Crying Lion, sir.
Get word to SCAT headquarters. I want them in the air immediately.
Brilliant, sir. If anyone can handle a job like this, it's them.
So, let's have Jean-Luc Cougar...
Oh, such a good name.
...fight a bunch of terrorists that have demands, and with sticking your back against a wall in the most rudimentary, barely works kind of way... But full voice acting, which again on the N64 was kind of a rarity until they ported it onto the PS2 like a year or two later, because that was a late N64 release. That was like 1999 or 2000. I never played the PS2 version, but again, this is also another time where I'm like looking at this game, I'm like, this is such a lesser version of this. And like some people would throw Siphon Filter in there. I was like, this is just trying to be, Metal Gear Solid.
But one of the things I would argue about, which I looked into Project Winback, because I actually played a little bit of Project Winback 2.
As you would, because it was an Xbox game.
Yeah. And one of the things that's really interesting is that...
that had some ideas, that game.
Whereas, because the thing is, Cliff Bleszinski quotes Killswitch as the inspiration for Gears of War. But a lot of the people from Killswitch clearly were looking at what Project Winback was doing with cover shooting.
Who is Killswitch made by?
Killswitch, I can't remember. There was, again, a very B-list style.
It was American, though, right?
No. It was published by someone like Namco, I think.
This isn't the game that got cancelled, is it?
No, it came out. I've played it.
Okay, no, but there was a game that was very third person that had this camera angle that Namco was involved with, and that got canceled. It was the game where the guy had yellow glasses.
I don't know that one.
Fuck, I have to look that up.
But yeah, no, the thing about Kill Switch is that's the one that, Cliff Bleszinski, cites as the inspiration for Gears of War. But I think Project Windback is like, if you want to talk about, like, lineage, Peter Jackson experimenting in his backyard with bad taste and making an extremely clunky gore movie and then going from strength to strength. Windback is like, in terms of history, is like a direct line to Gears of War in terms of cover mechanics.
I remember Cliff saying like Resident Evil 4 was kind of a thing.
I think he said that Resident Evil 4 was for the third person perspective, but it was Kill Switch that was the cover
based part. Okay.
Yeah.
Frame City Killer.
Oh god, that's a great name.
Something like that. What is it? Frame City Killer for the Xbox 360. Under development by Namco. Okay, this is what it is. This is like, again, Prime. The player assumes the role of secret agent Crow, who must hunt down Khan, a terrorist drug lord who's creating virtual acid. Shut up, get fucking in. After repeated delays in development, a lack of presentation in numerous trade shows, and with media releases that failed to impress, Namco decided to cancel the title in May of 2006. That's early in the 360 lifespan.
Yeah. It's the same thing that happened to Diabolic. Do you remember Diabolic?
Diabolic?
Diabolic.
Diabolic, right.
The game that's in Grandma's Boy.
What's the deal with it?
Okay, so...
Because I have one of those.
There was a game called Diabolic, or Diabolique.
It's a guy in like a ninja costume, right?
It's a giant demon.
Oh, okay. This is a different Diabolic. Okay, there's two that are named.
The footage in Grandma's Boy of the game that they play in Grandma's Boy.
Yeah.
That's the game. It was published by Majesco, and they were using.
But then Majesco happened.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
But it was the Grandma's Boy was supposed to be publicity for the game itself, and it never came out on the 360.
Didn't quite work out.
No, it was a shame.
There's a bunch of Dreamcast games you want to talk about, so why don't you go through them?
Okay. First off, I want to give you shit.
For?
Okay, so when you first put this chronological thing together, you lumped all the Dreamcast games in the same generation as the PS1 and the N64 and the Saturn.
It's its own weird pocket generation.
Oh, man, it's something that makes me angry every time I see it. Dreamcast was part of the PS2 generation. Thank you very much.
Okay, all right.
But very quickly, I think you wrote this down, but I agree with you. Sort of the Berserk Guts Rage. It's an early Dreamcast game which features one of our favourite anime characters, I'm assuming.
Yep, Puck the Elf.
Yeah. It's Casca, obviously.
It's Casca.
Yeah. But it's actually made by
What's the name of the villain?
The villain?
Yeah, what's the name of the villain? Do you remember?
Are we talking about Griffin? Or are we talking about the villain?
Of the game.
Oh, it's the Duke of something or other.
Ballsack.
It's Duke Ballsack. Okay.
That's funny, because it sounds like... It's actually Balzac.
Yeah.
But back in 1999, 2000, I was like, South Park.
And then you have to fight a giant mutated baby as the final boss.
Yeah. It's there. It's like his unborn child or whatever. I don't know. That's really weird because sort of the Berserker was like, this is some cool action game. Yeah. No idea about the anime.
Me either.
Exactly. So when I won a fan art contest for drawing black Dragon Ball characters, the guy would take which of my CDs of anime. I have like 500 CDs of anime. What do you want? I saw a CD called Berserk. I'm like, I wonder if that has anything to do with that game on the Dreamcast. Yeah. And strangely enough, it did. I was like, oh my god! So it really pisses me off that game with no anime, like no one even knew back then, and the PS2 Berserk game that the anime was completely localized, dubbed, had been out on DVD, never came out here. Yeah. Because Sega Sammy, when that was a thing,
I remember that.
Sammy Studios had all those weird games. 7 Samurai, 20XDX.
Which I've played, yeah.
Spy Fiction.
I never played Spy Fiction.
Gotta play Spy Fiction. Okay, Swery's magnum opus.
Fantastic.
And because those games failed so spectacularly commercially, they're like, we're not going to bring this Berserk game out. Sorry. Like, it was going to be one of them. So that's sad. You played this game so much, and you beat it.
I've beaten it on all the difficulties because we wanted to unlock everything.
Yeah.
And actually, the final boss is not the hardest boss in the game. It's
the hallway.
It's Zod.
You mean in the middle of the game when you fight Zod? Yeah, it is.
That's the hardest fight in the entire game.
It is. I watched Liam do.
We basically, me and a guy called Paul, who used to work at Babel in England. Actually, was one of our haunts. We stayed up for 7 hours trying to beat Sword of Berserk on every difficulty, and one guy was passed out on our sofa. And
Do you skip the movies then, or do you just watch them all?
I
skip all the cinemas because it's like half the game.
Oh no! I was into that. It was one of the few games I was into.
The story, right?
Yeah, I was like, good. Tell me more about this weird nihilistic story. It really pulled me in. But yeah, I mean, we obsessed over it. We played all the Puck mini games to try and do all the unlockables because you unlocked Puck's mini game if you beat it on easy.
Forgot about that.
And then there's like 2 more game modes that you unlock if you beat it on medium and hard. And we beat all of it. And it was actually it was the first time we were introduced to QuickTime events because we hadn't played Shenmue at that time.
Right.
So we were really into this game for that respect.
I played Shenmue. I played the that HD re-release of it not too long ago, and I was like, this is still really fun and charming and whatever. And like a lot of people just kind of shit on it. They're like, oh, Yakuza replaced it. I'm like, those are 2 different games. I'm sorry. Like, one was made with like this completely different philosophy and the other one was made there's parallels. But playing through Shenmue 1, it's like I can... It depends on the game, but it's like I can really appreciate this now. This still has charm and it's fun figuring things out. But I never played it when it came out. The first time I played Shenmue was like when I was testing. So like in 2006-ish, someone just had a Dreamcast running in the break room. And I was like, let me actually play Shenmue for the first time. And it was just during an hour-long lunch break. Couldn't really appreciate it back then. But when it came out, like when did Shenmue 1 come out? 99 or 2000?
It would have been 99 or 2000. I can't remember exactly.
And I'm like, I just imagine how mind-blowing it must have been to actually play it back then.
It blew me away at the time. Although I did turn around to my housemate and go, wait a minute, this is basically Zelda.
Well,
I was being obtuse would be the word I would use, and I was trying to get a reaction.
You're not wrong, especially Ocarina of Time. And you're talking to villagers, you're going to villages, you're doing side quests, and it makes sense.
But I think we should skip over the next 2, and I think you should probably talk about Bujingai if you can.
So, you can talk about this in general because Bujingai is like another like hallmark of like, we're trying to make Resident Evil 4. It's really tough. Why do you make this? No, that's too weird. Turn it into something else. Let's call it, I don't know, Devil May Cry. Wow, this blew up. Now everyone's making a Devil May Cry, and Bujingai is one of those games. I played a couple. There's a game I think I probably need to either show you, or if you don't know it, it's called Code of the Samurai, 10,000 Swords. What is it? It's a really bad localization, bad dubbing of like a Japanese game, and you're just in ancient China and you're just killing things. Bujingai is that, except it's spearheaded by the luminary of all game development, Gact.
Oh god.
He stars as the main character. He like voices in Japanese, does a song, does everything. Remember, Gact also brought Berserk back too.
Oh, did he?
Like, Gact was, like, just sitting in a throne one day and just said, more Berserk. And then they made all those Berserk movies, the ones that redo the anime.
Right.
He just asks for things to come back, and they do.
It's not always bad, then.
Our God Emperor...
Didn't he also... Isn't he the main character from Final Fantasy VIII? Or isn't someone modelled Gact off of that or something?
He voiced one of the characters. They voiced Vincent Valentine, I think. Bujingai is like... I did a video of that with Wooly not too long ago, and it was a good old time. That's like almost on the upper tier, because you look at that and it's so over the top and colorful and kind of like silly, but it actually played quite well and had these really neat features about it. And then there's the opposite, like I don't know, the adaptation of Van Helsing for the Xbox, the PS2.
Oh, classic.
That is straight out one of the most shameless Devil May Cry ripoffs, where it's the same animations, it's the same jumping animations, it's the same style rating. It's like when you complete a level and it shows like the breakdown of how you did. It's the most like ripoff ever. I think I want to say that was made by Sapphire Entertainment, that made like Bio Freaks, the Xena Warrior Princess fighting game, the Hercules game, I think. Let me look that up.
Nothing but classics on this one.
It's so good. But yeah, like Devil May Cry got its own, like, because people, that's a formula that you can copy very quickly. It's a character that moves fast and can attack things like even faster with swords or guns or whatever, and just open up an arena and then just have the doors lock and then enemies come in
and then you just go for
rinse and repeat. It's very easy to do.
for me was one of the games that I only knew as legend because there was a Scottish show called Consolvania, which is kind of a precursor to what people do in YouTube now.
Really?
They basically, it was a couple of Scottish guys who did sketches and played video games and did reviews about them. Mm-hmm. And I remember it's almost indecipherable from anyone who's not from England because they have incredibly thick Scottish accents.
Like, it's not even like the charming accents that you can get behind. It's like, I don't understand what they're saying.
Like, a lot of Americans really struggle with them.
Okay.
And anyway, so they basically put out this thing and they were like, you need to play Bujingai. And they showed off videos and I was watching it. And I remember watching it and being like, I actually have no idea what's going on right now. I'm just staring at a screen and there's lots of like clashing and violence happening.
Okay.
And I was like, this looks so cool. But I have no idea what's going on.
So I have to make mention of this. Sapphire Games, I looked them up. They did do Van Helsing. I need to run down this list really quickly because this is chef's kiss.
Yeah.
Chef kiss. James Bond 007 for the Game Boy. It's just called James Bond 007, right? Rampage World Tour, the port on the N64. Bio Freaks. They ported StarCraft Brood War onto the N64.
Oh, my God.
They did the Game Boy version of Oddworld Adventures. Top Gear Rally 2 on the N64, a Xena Warrior Princess, The Talisman of Fate, the 4-player fighting game on the N64, The Mask of Zorro on the Game Boy Color, Cyber Tiger, the SD super deformed Tiger Woods arcadey golf game, Army Men Sarge's Heroes on the Dreamcast, Lego Bionicle, The Legend of Matanui, Barbarian on the PlayStation 2. Do you know that one?
Yes, I do.
That's a good fucking game. Justice League and Justice for All on the Game Boy Advance, not Justice League Task Force.
Yeah.
The Hobbit game.
I remember that vaguely. I don't.
Not the console version, mind you, just the Game Boy Advance version.
Oh God!
And this was like there's no Hobbit movie, but there's Lord of the Rings movies.
So just
tie it in.
Yeah.
Van Helsing on the PlayStation 2, Xbox, not the GameCube, but the Game Boy Advance, and finally Thunderbirds on the Game Boy Advance, based off the movie, and then they're
defunct.
Their games are defunct after 2004.
Sapphire, may you rest in peace.
Yeah, no, that is everything that we're talking about. So,
oh, bless him. There was actually a couple of good games like pretty solid games in there.
There was a Tom Clancy game mixed in there too.
Yeah.
Why don't we zip forward ahead? We were talking before we started this up about From Software.
Yeah.
From Software, back in the PS2, GameCube, Xbox era, they made so many every year. Lost Kingdoms on the GameCube, which is a card battling game that Liam never shuts up about. It was like you're this girl and then you just run around in a 3D map and then throw down your cards and monsters come out and battle.
I mean, there's even Kingsfield, the Kingsfield series, which they've been doing for quite some time.
Shadow Tower is also like an incredible, like what they did before, older Souls games. Echo Knight Beyond, ever play that?
I've never played that one.
Ever heard of it?
Now I have.
It is a horror game where you're stranded on a space station or on like a space station or like a spaceship, and you're just a spaceman in a suit, and there's ghosts everywhere. And there's this miasma, and the miasma is what makes the ghosts aggressive. And you have no combat abilities, you have nothing, and your health is your heart rate. If you get close to the ghost, then your heart rate goes and you just die. I played this on a PS2 demo disc with an old magazine back in the day, and it was so fucking scary. And you would have long, awkward but charming Japanese stilted voice acting, and what you had to do is plan out your route. You can look at the areas where these aggressive ghosts are and look through monitors and go, okay, I need to get to the ventilation thing, and then I pull that, and then all the gas goes away, and then the ghost becomes friendly, and the ghost has an issue. Like, I have an item that means a lot to me, and you solve these side stories of all these ghosts.
It's almost like a point and click adventure.
Yeah, but it's first person.
Okay.
And you're very Metroid Prime. You're stuck in your suit, your helmet. And they made a couple of Echo Knight games, and this is just the futuristic version. They did ones that are in the old-timey spaces. There was a PlayStation 1 game. They did that, and of course they did Otogi. They did a lot of cool Xbox games.
Otogi was the first time that I ever paid attention to a developer.
I thought you were going to say it's the first time I felt love.
That too. But yeah, no, the Togi was the first time I ever paid a proper attention to a developer, because before that...
what else did these guys do? What else are they making?
Yeah, okay. For me it was the publisher made everything. So it was Sega, or it was Activision, or it was EA. I never actually paid attention to the small font. But I saw it was published by Sega, and I was like, this isn't Sega game. Yeah. This is someone else. Mm-hmm. And Otogi was the first time I did it. I remember playing the demo and just wailing through destructible scenery and just being like, oh my god, I can destroy everything in this game. Which is it was clearly not a big main name game, but it was doing things that no one else was really doing. And it was
yeah, you could kind of say it's Devil May Cry, but it was also really different, because that destructibility on that game is insane.
Yeah.
And then Otogi 2 had something stupid, 6 playable characters.
And they all played differently.
Incredibly differently.
Yeah.
The fact that no one's worked out re-releasing those in some capacity, Microsoft putting Microsoft's backwards compatibility games for on the Xbox One are the most amazing re-releases ever. Ninja Gaiden alone is just, it runs in 1080p, it's all bumped up, it is improved. The fact that no one has tried to get Otogi there, just one. I'd rather both, but just one, because I have Otogi 2, I don't have Otogi 1.
Yeah. Reviews in official Xbox magazine of Otogi 2 were it's nice that they're trying to go for diversity, but I couldn't remember how to play as all the different characters, so it's not as good as Otogi 1.
I can kind of see that. Even Devil May Cry 5 coming out, it's got 3 playable characters. They're no, we can't make it too crazy. But it had 5 or 6. There was a werewolf. There was a big, huge guy. There was
a big battle hammer or something. Yeah, I remember him. Yeah.
Oh God! So this is where I'll mention the game I wanted to mention before. I was talking to a guy at a con who's a fellow YouTuber, and he was just yeah, I really like, the PS2 and that whole era. And I'm like, man, the Xbox is fucking cool. And he's like, no, it wasn't. And I was like, no. North America, yeah, it's fine. It has some cool stuff. But I'm like, the Xbox, if you look at everything, is really cool. And he's like, why? I'm like, there were Japanese-only Xbox games, and some of them were, incredible. That just never came out. There were wrestling games for the Xbox. There's one called The Wild Rings. That just, because fuck it, back then, licenses didn't matter. License copyright holdings in Japan are different. You can just kind of do it and no one will notice. So it's wrestling games for the Wild Rings. They're just let's just get every Japanese federation in there. Let's, get Stone Cold Steve Austin in there. Who cares? What are they going to do? They can't do anything. So Stone Cold's just in the game.
That's awesome.
So one of those games I want to talk about, where I looked it up and I'm like, holy shit, I have an Xbox that can play it. There's a game called Dinosaur Hunting.
I've played it.
You've played it.
Of course I've played it.
That is the most incredible... What the hell? Why is this Monster Hunter before Monster Hunter?
And it's kind of set in the time when... Isn't there an adventurer, a famous English adventurers referenced in it over and over and over again?
Yeah.
The main character from King Solomon's Mines is
is it Jules Verne or something?
Someone like that. But
it's premised me and Liam did a video ages ago, but it's basically...
I watched it.
Yeah.
I was so excited. because I didn't know anyone else who'd played it.
This game is completely localized. Well, not really, but it is localized. Its story is localized. Yeah. It has English voice acting. It basically takes a bunch of countries that are all like Team USA, Team Spain, Team Germany, and they're all hunting dinosaurs in this like game preserve, and it's very much like old school Monster Hunter, where you go from zone to zone tracking each one, like, oh, there's a huge pile of shit here, this must be some animal. And I'm like, why did this was published by Microsoft, it's just never localized. And I'm like, that's incredible. Like for the PlayStation 2, it's a given. There's going to be thousands of games, well, hundreds of games. There's going to be hundreds of games that are like that. But I'm like, the fact that this exists is so amazing to me. The fact that it's a Monster Hunter style clone, but not really, because it's all futuristic and everyone has guns. And I'm like, that is what like makes me. Back in the day, I had a GameCube, I had a PlayStation 2 a little later, and my friend had an Xbox, and I always kind of felt his Xbox was stupid. Because he would just wind up playing games that I'm like, he's like, Brute Force! I'm like, I don't really like Brute Force. And he'd have me play Brute Force, and I still like Brute Force, but it has been a while since I played it. And we just wind up playing whatever games he would rent. I had no say in it. And I was always kind of given like a bad rap. Like, yeah, I knew about Halo, and I knew like Sega had a bunch of like cool games on there, but it's only until much later where I'm like, now I have, like, God, Chicago Enforcer on the Xbox, or the Miami Vice game that was exclusive to Europe.
Yes, I know that one.
Yeah, you know that one. Did you work on it?
I didn't. Thank God.
And that's what makes me think, like, the GameCube has a few, but the Xbox has really special ones.
There is one I can't remember the name of, which was supposedly made by the guy who made Onimusha. And it's basically an Onimusha style game set in a weird spirit world. I only played it in Japanese.
I don't know.
And I cannot remember the name of the game.
Damn.
And I only played a borrowed from the internet copy on my chipped Xbox. Mm-hmm. And I played through for a bit until I had no idea what I was doing, but it had a very distinct visual style, but it played just like Onimusha. And I cannot tell you what that game is.
I'll have to look that up.
I was trying to find it so I could talk about it today.
The only way you could find it is just like look up Japanese-only Xbox games, I guess.
Yeah.
And of course, things like, you know, still in the From Software front, you know, we talked about before, Metal Wolf Chaos.
Yeah.
Again, From Software did all these weird things, and for whatever reason, most of them on the Xbox. It was just really strange that they gravitated towards it. It also reminds me of when, I think early on the 360 life, like a lot of cave shooters came over to the 360.
Cave shooters were easier to port to the 360 because
Why?
Because it didn't have the cell processor and they didn't have to worry about any of that. Because they essentially, like, the way that they were building their games were just like, we make PC games and then we put them onto arcade. So we can port these to 360 no problem. So they got churned out. It was one of the only things I was really happy about having a 360 early on. It was like Gears of War, but then all the cave shooters. And I was just like, oh my god, I can just play everything.
So our mutual friend, one shmup god Patrick, would always be like, why are all the shmups on Xbox? Because he's kind of a PlayStation guy for a long time. And he was always just like, damn it. And when we go on the Xbox, like, the test marketplace.
Yeah.
And he would just be like, hey, what's this? Garage? Guanje? What is this? And he's like, damn it. They're releasing more. I hate this. Is there any other games around this era that
around
Xbox
this
that
area,
you want to bring up?
Well, I mean, I think maybe it's worth mentioning just simply because of the amount of time I played it and loved it. But there's a game called Spike Out Battle Street.
I have it, yeah.
And I was obsessed with that game for a long period of time. And it was a direct arcade port.
The shame with that is that it is a direct arcade port. I wish they kind of rejiggered it to be a bit more home friendly.
Yeah, and whether giving them a bit of extra like replayability or something like that. It had
online, didn't it?
Yes, it did. Damn. You could play 2-player co-op through the game.
Nothing makes me happier than like the holy trinity of its Spike Out, Beatdown, Fists of Vengeance,
which I'm going to probably talk about as well.
Final Fight Streetwise, but Final Fight Streetwise is a little kind of, because it's more story based, where the others are kind of just, you know, run around town and beat things up.
Yeah.
And then, I mean, if you really want to go back, it doesn't really count, but Crime City or Crime something.
You're not going to talk about Crime Life, are you?
Crime Life.
Oh, hell yeah, man. That fool is shady. He pulled that same shit on some folks in my building, too. Hey, homie, I thought you just lived in that chair, in that stupid Moore jumpsuit. Nah, I live in your mama, punk. That's why she bought me these clothes last week, yo.
The gangster one where you have to kill the members
by Konami. Or Konami published.
Yeah, Konami published, and you have to kill the members of D12. Is it D12?
I think maybe they're not really D12.
They are. They're voiced by the characters. And
I gotta look that up.
And it's all the members of D12. Except for Eminem.
And of course, Urban Reign.
Oh
Urban Reign is considered, like, from what people have told me, I played Urban Reign a bit. Like, when Urban Reign came out, I rented it, and I was like, the problem with that, again, it's very mission-based, where it's just like, jump into an arena, you kill, like, 2 or 3 guys, and then that's it. That's the mission, and then you go around like a map.
Yeah.
And I'm like, but there's Tekken characters in there. The fighting mechanics are, like, out of all the games, I think, like, it has been a while since I played Spike Out, but I'm like, it seemed like the most solid fighting system.
Well, the thing about Spike Out, the only defense I give of it is actually that a lot of its combos were combos that people didn't realize until after they played for a while.
Right.
So there's a character you
learning
unlock.
Curve.
Yeah, there's a character you unlock about halfway through the game. He's got giant tattoos all over his back, and he's wearing one of those,
as he should,
one of those masks that the characters from Kill Bill that she murders the crazy.
Oh right, yeah, okay.
He's got one of those masks on. And actually, until you learn to string together a 5-hit combo with him, you won't beat that level. And
it was tough when I played it. I was like, how am I not beating this boss? Like,
and it's about timing and placement and movement. And,
okay.
I've only beaten Spike Out Battle Street twice.
You're like really disappointed with yourself.
Well, that level's really hard. But yeah, I mean, I think probably Urban Reign. Did you say
Urban Reign?
Yeah. I think they had thought out their combo system more, whereas actually a lot of the Spike Out combos were incidental, where you just go, oh, I can string this punch into this punch. It felt like playing the first Street Fighter 2, where they hadn't thought of combos in mind,
but they were there.
But they were there just because of priorities and where hitbox.
You had to find tech.
Exactly.
Basically. Spike, like all those, like just Japanese companies trying to make urban focused brawling games. Like, I don't know why. It was because I've talked about this to someone. They're like, we can't do Grand Theft Auto, but let's try to do Grand Theft Auto. But what do we know? Fighting, like hand-to-hand fighting. So that's why all of them, like Crime City is a little bit different because
Crime Life is Crime Life.
I worked on
Crime Life.
Okay, fair enough.
I worked on Crime Life for 2 months. So.
Fair enough. And they're like, that's all we can do. Until Capcom was like, why don't we just publish these Grand Theft Auto games in Japan? And they sold really well. They're like, fuck it. We wasted time doing our stupid shit before with a Beatdown Fist of Vengeance. They released Beatdown Fist of Vengeance and Final Fight Streetwise within like 3 months of each other.
And so they were eating each other's lunch.
Exactly.
It was bad.
It was real bad. Do you want to move into the 360? I feel like you have a lot to say here.
I do. So yeah, we should speed up so we don't, affect all your poor video editors who are going to have to go, oh god, not another 2-hour video.
No, we're doing okay. But is there one in particular on the 360? Because I think I'm seeing one here that I'm like, yeah, you probably want it.
Okay, there are at least 3 that I'd want to talk about during the 360 era. Okay, go ahead. I mean, do we talk about Inversion, or do we skip that one?
Okay, let me just say, Inversion is my go-to of... That's when, like, B and C tier games on that generation of consoles, because budgets were getting so much higher, just in terms of, the graphical fidelity, the submission process, whatever. And it was just like, let's just rip a thing off. And I find the amount of wacky, weird, like strange ideas or whatever that you would see a lot on the PS2, the GameCube, and the Xbox just started tapering off a bit. They were still there, but they're just tapering off. Where like Inversion is Gears of War, but gravity. Yeah. Then there's Fracture, which was Gears of War, but when you shoot into the ground, it makes mounds.
But actually, the thing if you played enough of Inversion, a game that we skipped over, which is obviously PsyOps, the Mind Game Conspiracy. Yeah. Inversion was using a lot of the same kind of ideas, where you could lift up a car and be shooting at someone and then throw the car at them. Yeah. So you could stun people and then just throw a giant car at them and kill them. Mm-hmm. And indeed, also, they had huge levels where you were essentially flying through free space and jumping from cover to cover, which, if anything, has been emulated with the current PS VR games. So
a lot, yeah. It's a lot of first-person shooters where you can do one thing with one arm and then just do bullshit with the other.
Yeah, and just move, and also you zap to a spot. And the open, like the freeform versions of inversion is you look at a spot and then you go towards it and kind of like stay covered and stuff.
This is gonna piss you off. There's a game that's exactly like everything you described. Just came out like a month ago on Steam. It's made by a Chinese company. It's called Bright Memory, and it's just everything. It's a first-person shooter where you're this futuristic cyber girl. You have a laser katana in one hand. You can do like an EMP pulse that knocks enemies into the air, combo them with your sword, but you have guns too, and the enemies are just tigers with like gecko frills. It's just complete nonsense.
That sounds amazing.
And it's episodic. So the first episode is like you can beat it in an hour, but the second episode is coming out. What
is with the Chinese obsession with episodic action games?
I don't know, but
they did the same thing with Gene Rain.
What? How is that episodic?
Gene Rain. That's the first Gene Rain is episode 1. Gene Rain is episode 1.
See that?
Yeah, that's to be continued. I'm so excited.
Bright Memory, like, but if you look on the Steam reviews, they're like, this game is really fun. Like, the mechanics are actually really fun. It's just like, it's subject materials. Like, there's a million different HUDs because she's a cyber girl. So there's all this UI bullshit that's like there's a huge circular thing around your gun telling you all the info about your gun, where it was made, what type of friends this gun has, and all of its bullets. But I played a little bit. It was like unplayable for me on a keyboard and mouse, but they just patched in like Xbox controller support.
Okay.
And it's just one of those things. I hope it's like, please don't let Gene Rain come out on consoles, but not this, because this is what I want. This Bright Memory on Steam, like that is a C tier game for sure.
Oh man, that sounds very exciting.
Did you put down Bullet Witch or did I?
I think you put Bullet Witch down.
I don't want to talk about Bullet Witch. Okay. But Cavia is a pretty shitty overall developer. I mean, they did a lot of the grunt work on Nier 1, not Automata, but then they made like Umbrella Chronicles, the shooters, and they made Bullet Witch, and they made lots of other bullshit. And then there's
Beatdown Fist of Vengeance.
They made Beatdown Fist of Vengeance. I forgot, and Drakengard as well.
Yeah,
I forgot about that.
Drakengard 1 and 2 that they worked on, and they were part of the teams, like, you know, Clover. And because I think they at some point Cavia were like linked quite heavily with Capcom. Yeah. And when Capcom started closing down studios, Cavia was one of the ones that basically ran out of money and had to close down basically. Because they were the guns for hire for Capcom for quite some time, doing like whatever. I mean, I can't promise this, but I'm pretty sure that at one point they were signed on to do some of like the engine work for God Hand or something like that.
I can see that.
Yeah.
Like, usually at the end of a Japanese game, you'll see, like, 50 company logos because they all did a little something. Like, they helped out with engine work or sound, usually, cutscenes, that type of stuff. So, that's the general 360 era, but, like, I see that, like, you have some absolute favorites you want to talk about.
I do. I mean, we've already talked about Beatdown Fists of Vengeance, but I kind of want to defend this game a little bit more because where it went differently to a bunch of the other games that we mentioned in that kind of beat 'em up is that it did have a storyline. It actually had 7 storylines. Each character...
It's too many.
Yeah, each character had a different plot line that went through it. It had a leveling system.
There was like, okay, the plot lines were the main guy that swears, the other guy that swears, the woman that swears,
Wooly.
the other woman that swears. There's Wooly.
Yeah.
And there's the guy with like, what type of accent was that? Was
it's indistinguishable.
Pikey?
Yeah,
like...
it's a weird thing. Yeah, but they all of them overlapped, so you'd see different parts of the story depending on
which
who
was
you played
cool,
to, which I thought was a really good idea. But then also they had a whole crew system, so you could beat up other people on the street, or you could make them join your crew.
Yeah, force them.
Yeah. But then also what would happen is some of the crew members you might hire would have grudges with other crew members. So if you called them and make them join your team at the same time, they would fight each other.
And you literally had to call them. You had to go over to like a phone booth or cell phone, and then you'd be like, "Are you available?" And he's like, "Nah, man, I'm busy."
Yeah, or he'd be like, "Oh no, not that guy," and then he'd show up, and then they'd fight each other. But also, like, you had a notoriety system which worked similar.
Different districts, you had like different like coolness with that district. You had to wear different clothes too, maybe.
Well, no, you had to wear clothes to offset your visibility. So when you wore new clothes, it lowered your wanted meter, essentially.
Okay, yeah.
But you could also have plastic surgery done, which meant that you could completely change your characters' faces.
Yeah. That's the charm of that game.
And they showed up in cutscenes like that as well. That was like, I was so into that game. I was absolutely loved it. I loved like unlocking new combo systems through leveling up. The fact that each of the characters had different fighting styles. So like the woolly character was all about obviously slamming people into the ground. And
and then other characters were like all taekwondo, so like a lot of kicks.
Yeah, exactly.
One of the things that I remember about that game, and like this is just generalized like features, like I love knocking people into shit.
Yeah.
I don't know what it is, but it's like Mortal Kombat, I'm like, oh, I want to do the pit fatality. And like Dead or Alive, I'm like, oh, I want the really big transition to like all the way down the waterfall. Like Dead or Alive 2, I think I said before, it's like one of my favorite like fighting games in general. Like I don't know where it places, but I just love playing that so much. And Beatdown had like hit a guy into the road and then a car just runs him over, or like a train or something. And it happens so rarely, which is cool. If it happens too much, then you get kind of desensitized to it. But when it just Def Jam, Fight for New York's or whatever, had a couple of those as well.
Yeah, on the end subway system and just basically destroying them.
And they're just knocking a guy out of the building. Like, I don't know why that mechanic's so satisfying to me. I've never been on a roof with anyone where I'm like, oh, you're going down. Like, just throw them over.
That's the thing about sleeping dogs that I really enjoyed as well.
That too.
Throwing a guy off a roof or slamming him into phone
like an electrical conduit box or whatever. Yeah, no, it's good stuff.
But yeah, I guess the other two that I should probably just mention briefly is obviously, for me, the daddy of all of these, which is the Earth Defense Force series.
That has embraced B&C culture so much that it just permeates. It just stays around. There's a new one coming out soon.
Yeah, and it's almost feels like it's found its home on the PS4, where the actual PS4 can actually run it without the frame rate dropping to like single digits.
What do you feel about that? Do you like that though?
I like that it makes it more accessible for everyone else. Like, that's not what I want. That's not what I want. But what I want is I want like, 10 frames per second, bullet time ridiculousness. Right. Because there's hundreds of aliens.
As a building is crashing down on a bunch of giant ants.
Exactly. But I love the fact that people from Giant Bomb to Rami Ishmael are now thinking about Earth Defense Force. And like, so you've got like Giant Bomb kind of bro culture, really lovable guys talking about Earth Defense Force. And then you have Rami Ishmael, intellectual, doing GDC talks. But also enthusiastically posting.
I love Earth Defense Force.
Look at this screenshot of all these explosions. It's so beautiful. And I'm like, yes. Yeah.
And that was like, I'd never heard of it until, of course, the 2017.
Yeah.
And I think it was probably you that was like, yeah, Earth Defense Force. And I'm like, what? And you're like, Earth Defense Force. I'm like, you need to give me more information. And you're like, Earth Defense Force. And like then I saw someone boot it up and I was like, holy shit. And it's just
I showed you the Godzilla level, and at the time I didn't know how much you liked Godzilla, but I think I nailed it for that particular level.
You somehow knew. You smelt the musk on me. And then let's talk about Earth Defense Force a bit more. It's just like, they leaned into it so hard. They're like, we need to have Americans make this for us too. See how that goes. And then, of course, came Insect Armageddon.
Yeah.
Which was like, wow, you almost nailed this. Where it was just like, there was 20 levels?
Yeah, and they made them longer. They made them longer.
Which is not gooder.
Segmented. Yeah, exactly.
But you got the voice acting right, and you made smart changes to like the classes.
Well, they copied it. They actually copied it because 2025 took some of the classes from Insect
They knew it was a good idea, like having the angels
guys. Well, the angels actually from Global Defense Force 2.
The Vita version?
No, Global Defense Force 2 came out on the PS2 prior to Earth Defense Force 2017.
And it was something they brought back.
And they brought the Pale Wing. But the guy with the giant shield was actually introduced in Insect Armageddon, and they put him in 2025 as well.
Okay.
Yeah.
And now we're like, I think the new game, Iron Sky.
I think that's sort of introducing some almost like robot alchemic drive style controls to the robots.
That, and it's actually not made by Sandlot. I read that it's made by Yuke's, makers of Berserk, sort of the Berserker.
And the early OK UFC tap out games.
Yeah, no, they made a couple of those. I made a video recently where I'm like, Yuke's made 12 wrestling games in 5 years. Like, this includes Rumble Roses.
Right, okay.
This includes all the WWE games. This includes, like, Japanese-only games, like 5 in 12 years.
Yeah.
12 in 5 years. And it's just incredible. And I'm pretty sure they're making Iron Rain. I think that's what it's called. But, like, now it's like Earth Defense Force is just almost a genre because they have multiple releases. Like, I got 2025, then I got the Japanese version that had more stuff on top of that.
And there's also, then they released 4.1, which was basically
I think that's what I'm thinking of.
Yeah, it's a rejigged version of 2025 for the PS4 exclusive.
And they know that there's like a fan base for this that will stick around, and it's just weird to me that like, why to North Americans at least, or Europeans as well, is like, why did this 360? Because there was no PS3 release of 2017.
Yeah,
it's like, how did this just survive and even flourish? Like, I'm just amazed that it's able to do it.
Yeah.
Any other general thoughts on Earth Defense Force?
Well, I mean, again, I'm using certain parallels, but like for me, Earth Defense Force is a little bit like the Fast and Furious. At first, it was a big joke.
Yeah, and then it got real serious.
But then, in the same way, at first I kind of loved it ironically, and then became unironically in love with the game, like passionate about it. And I feel that's very Fast and Furious. It just somehow it rose above the sum of its parts into something else, and it's fantastic. Basically.
No, absolutely. You want to talk about Mindjack?
We should talk about Mindjack very briefly.
Okay.
We should very briefly talk about Mindjack,
because it's like the first thing in your list.
Yeah.
Hey, what are you doing?
I'm sending the virus to the security system.
What?
It'll open the shutters.
Aren't you full of surprises?
And now we just wait for the magic to happen.
Who the hell are you, lady?
Because it's a very B-tier game. It's an afterthought by Square Enix. Like, they had no interest in this game whatsoever. It's a cover shooter, so it copies...
Is that Cavi as well?
It might be, actually. The thing with Mindjack is that what they did is they had a bunch of mechanics that they'd ripped off of some other people.
Yep.
And then what they did is introduced incredible multiplayer.
See, when I played it, it's all but dead. Like, there was like no one on. So what was the multiplayer? So the
multiplayer in which it worked, it actually tied into the narrative of the game as well. It actually changed what the actual game was about.
Right.
So the idea is you could either start your own campaign, in which you were a blue spirit, or you could invade someone else's campaign as a blue spirit or as a red spirit. Now, if you invaded someone's campaign as a blue spirit, you were in co-op mode.
Okay.
And it meant you could possess any neutral enemies or knocked out enemies in the level. If you were a red spirit, you could invade any neutral or enemy spirits and try and stop people from finishing their campaign.
Right.
So it turned every single one of the campaign levels into a deathmatch, a third-person deathmatch with a point system. And all kinds of other stuff.
Because it reminds me of, like, it's a different world because it was on the N64, but it reminds me of the counter-operative mode in Perfect Dark, where you would be the enemies in the stage of a single-player stage, and the one player would be going through it, and your character that you inhabited would have very, like, few hit points.
Yeah.
So you just get killed, but then you would inhabit the next body of whatever, but, like, it's on the N64, so it ran like garbage, and you couldn't play it online, so... not knowing that's exactly how it worked, because I just, watched Liam play, like, the complete single player, and it was just... I don't want to say unplayable, but
It's clunky.
It's real clunky, but I can see why the idea makes more sense in multiplayer.
Some of the design decisions actually were designed around the multiplayer concept. So things like if you notice the melee was extremely clunky, the way it worked, but that was because they knew that if two guys could spam punch buttons at each other, and then it would depend on their connection ping about who actually connected the punch first. Ooh. So what they did is things like hold down the punch button to do multiple kicks, which means you're committing to this. Or tapping rapidly would mean you would commit to it, but you couldn't just tap once to do certain stuff. So we actually once you understood how the system worked from a multiplayer perspective, you could do things like take the main character from the game hostage, use them a bullet shield, and take out all of his friendly units. Mm-hmm. I played about 30 hours of Mindjack Online.
It was made by Feel Plus.
Yes, Feel Plus, who made Moondivers.
Moondiver. They made Ju-On, The Grudge on the Wii. They co-developed Lost Odyssey with Mistwalker. They did the visual production for Infinite Undiscovery, Star Ocean: The Last Hope, and they poorly ported No More Heroes to the PS3 with the Heroes Paradise Edition that has a worse frame rate and more crashes. That's Feel Plus in a nutshell.
Moondivers is really interesting.
Moondivers is a very interesting game. I remember playing that with a friend. I was just like, that's strangely good. Yeah. So yeah, Mindjack. I just there's two games that kind of link when I think of you specifically, and that's EDF. Three then. EDF, Metal Wolf, and Mindjack, because
I remember actually Mindjack was released the same week as one of the Call of Duties. It might have been Modern Warfare 2, and I remember Pat coming up to me and saying, "Yeah, we were on 360 and we were scrolling through Matt's friends list, and it was just Call of Duty, Call of Duty, Call of Duty, Call of Duty. Yeah, Mindjack. What the fuck is going on here?"
So. Do we want to talk about where we are in the modern era with
I think so. I think it's worth
B games, because I mentioned them once or twice, but I gotta show you this game because this would so be your jam. But the thing I wanted to sort of go into is that we're this era of you're a AAA game, you're an indie game. There's that distinction. I don't know where it crossed over, but I think the 360's pushing of Summer of Arcade and stuff like Braid and other things like that, it slowly was kind of will you pay a little less for a game that's a bit shorter? Not a little less, but even more. And then it's those games eventually, it was kind of the 360's initiative for a while. Yeah. And the PS2 would start to eventually get these games after whatever time limit the contract had to appear exclusively on the 360. And then just slowly just over into the Xbox One and PS4. Now it's just indie games and The Last of Us or God of War. And it seems to be where we are right now.
Well, for me, the thing that happened was it was things like Alien Hominid, whereby on GameCube, Xbox, and PS2 era, I was expected to pay.
Alien Hominid got boxed releases on those consoles,
and I remember I was expected to pay the same price for Alien Hominid as I was expected to play Halo, and I couldn't reconcile those costs. And so for me, that's B-tier games worked during that generation, because they you're going to pay the same amount as almost or a little bit less, maybe $10 less, but you'll basically get a full-bodied game. You'll be playing for this for about 20 hours at least. And so Alien Hominid never made sense to me. And then on the 360, we're actually, you'll be paying $10 for Alien
$20 for a really good one.
Yeah, a really, really good version of Alien Hominid. And I think that shifted. And then all of a sudden people were I'm happy to pay my $50, $60 for the AAA and then only pay $10 to $20 for the smaller experiences. And that's what started killing the idea of a B experience. Why would I want to play a lesser version of a AAA title when I could just play a smaller, more focused experience.
And like, I think Gene Rain was like something stupid, like $40, maybe $50. I don't remember.
It was pricey.
It was pricey. It was too pricey.
It was worth it, but it was pricey.
One of the things, like a buzzword that was said, like, I don't know now, maybe 2 years ago, was when Ninja Theory said, we want to make a AAA indie title with Hellblade: Senua's Sacrifice. And I was like, that's not going to work. It worked.
Yeah.
They just poured a lot of effort into that game, made something pretty unique, focused on a PS4 version, then slowly optimized it, and like, let's make an Xbox One version. I think the Xbox One version did stupid well. Like, it was on, like, Microsoft was pushing it.
And Microsoft have now bought that company.
Yeah, that's true. I forgot about that. Yeah. Right before, and they have a Switch version of Hellblade coming out, and I'm like, wow, I assume, because Hellblade, while that's a title that, like, 17-year-old me would be like, oh, yes.
Yeah.
Yes. And I was just like, that's so generic, because I got kind of tired of a lot of, like, arena shooters, like Heroes of Fate, Arenas of Valor, and all those. And Hellblade was, like, a little bit cooler, but I'm like, this is just not gonna fly. And, like, I was glad to be wrong, because they're doing that. And, like, yeah, a game bought by Microsoft, like that, Microsoft needs people to make games for them. Lord knows it. So I'm glad that worked out. And that's like one of those, I would actually not categorize that as an indie game or as a big AAA release. That fits somewhere in the middle of that. So that's pretty cool. There's a couple of other ones that I have a list, like Vampire.
Yeah.
Have you played that?
I have played it. It's a very good turn of the century version of Mass Effect with vampires.
And exactly. Yeah. That publisher, Focus Interactive, they're like an offshoot of the movie studio, I believe. Really? Focus, okay. And they're the ones that I think published that recent Call of Cthulhu game that came out. Yeah. A couple months back. They also published
the Blood Bowl series as well.
And
Styx.
Thank you. I was just like little goblin guy. Styx. These European publishers are kind of filling that void. I kind of find, like, Focus, there's like one or two that are still doing it. I don't know who published Past Cure. Have you played Past Cure?
I played a bit of Past Cure. That game's quite bad.
It's quite
it's probably someone like 505 Games.
505. Like Majesco was kind of doing that, but I didn't even think Majesco was like.
It pretty much did.
THQ Nordic is also one of those where they just bought the THQ name from whatever.
For me, that was symbolic of the death of the B game. Was when THQ decided to make a shot for AAA, and it basically
way too late.
Yeah, and it killed them. And it's like, no, you guys have been good at making B-tier games.
I was playing Warhammer 40k Space Marine not too long ago. I'm like...
Solid game.
But it's still a B game.
Absolutely.
It's just a Gears of War game. Oh, not a Gears of War game, but they're like, why would we ever use cover? And, like... THQ Nordic, I guess, because I'm not sure you played it, but like I've been championing Darksiders 3 for a while because I'm like, this game's going to be bad. I don't like it. I don't like anything I'm seeing it. When I actually sat down and played it, I'm like, this is not great. It's not amazing. It's buggy as hell at launch, and then they fixed a lot of it up, and I'm like, this is exactly what I want. And this type of PS2y, Xboxy action game is just not coming out anymore.
I mean, one of the things actually is really funny. I've been replaying Darksiders 1 and 2 in preparation for playing Darksiders 3. Mm-hmm. And I actually played Darksiders 1 on the hardest difficulty, and then played
Apocalyptic, I believe.
And then I played Darksiders 3, and Darksiders 3's basic difficulty is Darksiders 1's Apocalyptic difficulty.
Yeah.
It's incredibly punishing. Mm-hmm. Like, if you don't crowd control, you're dead. They will take chunks out of you really quickly.
Really fast.
Same as the bosses.
Are you playing with the classic combat or the new combat?
On
Darksiders 3.
I was just the classic.
Okay, so because like they patched it so that you want combat to be a bit more like the first two Darksiders, where you get instant heals and you can interrupt a lot of your combos with it. So you're playing in that difficulty?
Yeah.
Okay, because the initial launch difficulty was even harder because it was more Souls-like because she would have to take out the shard, crush it in her hand, then get a heal. And you had a lot less cancelability.
Less ability to cancel.
Yeah, you couldn't do it out of most of your combo strings.
Right, okay. So that's probably why I saw the parallels then, because I thought classic meant whatever Darksiders.
Yeah, no, it's annoying.
Okay.
They called it classic, but they meant like Darksiders, a bit more akin to Darksiders 1 or 2.
Yeah.
So when you start a new game now, it just says, do you want this difficulty or this, not combat style. It's not difficulty, like, scales all the enemy health and all that. But like that is also one of the ones. Okay. Devil's Hunt.
I know nothing about this.
This is... I believe it's stated to come out for consoles as well. This is, you are a dark-haired man in a leather coat that has a big glowing devil arm, and it's an action game, and you're just punching and killing things.
Sign me up. This sounds amazing.
Devil's Hunt. It said 2019 for it. I hope people are looking at the game footage right now. This is just like, I just fell over my chair when I saw it. I was like, whoa! I'm so happy because, again, third person is like, when you're in third person, you're then, you're playing some type of open world RPG, like, Witcher or what have you, any of those types of things. And it's just like, just a simple action game where it's just...
You get dropped into arena and start punching devils,
I can't tell yet to the trailer, like, if that's what it is or it's more of a story-focused thing, but it smacks of Infernal Hell's Vengeance on the 360.
Yes. I worked on that.
That's why I brought it up. Because I'm like, there's a 50% chance he worked on that. So there's that. Like, we talked about Gene Rain. We talked about Pascure a little bit and THQ Nordic's catalog.
Yeah.
Do you still feel that this... Because I'm like two minds about it. Do you still feel that like it's even worth a publisher saying, this is kind of what I want to make? This level of budget or this level of complexity or ambition, or does it just make no sense? And is it better to just scale back even further to be more firmly in the indie game camp, pixel art, so whatever art style it is? But do you think it like even makes sense to be in the space anymore?
I think we're part of a dying breed that enjoy this style of thing. I'm heartened by the fact that people like THQ Nordic, for all of their missteps with their current
very recent missteps.
Yeah, despite that, idiots. I'm actually heartened by the fact that they are at least trying to bring a catalogue of games where there's a low risk element to it, but are interesting titles.
Darksiders 3 did not sell well. They made back their money.
I mean, that's all I'm asking for.
Yeah, exactly. Just make back your money. But still release these things.
Yeah. And so, I think there's still a place for it, but I think what's going to happen, I think we're going to see constantly polarized. I think the fact that the Assassin's Creed, the Call of Duties, the Halos, the fact that and the Red Dead Redemptions and GTAs, the fact that they have to make so much money and have to swallow up so much of a chunk of people's time, that B class games, it's going to be harder and harder to actually get them heard.
Yeah.
And it will take publishers who are specifically focused on that kind of thing to do it. Whether it's worth it or not, it's hard to say. You're seeing a thing that Microsoft are very focused on is that they will spend about 60 to 70% of their budget on proven titles. And by proven titles, they mean Forza Horizon, they mean Halo, and they mean Gears of War. Then they'll spend about 20 to 25% of their budget, depending on what the year is, which will be spent entirely on titles that they're not sure about, but have got a name attached. And then the final part of their budget is on unproven content, things that they don't know. And that's like 2 to 5% of their budget at max that they'll spend on that.
Which is still not insignificant, but...
it's not insignificant, but it means that we're only going to get an occasional Kalimba and an occasional Crackdown 3.
Kalimba.
Yeah. We only get Crackdown 3.
Only you would say Kalimba.
I loved Kalimba. I worked on Kalimba.
I mean, I have I look at Steam. I see what's released on Steam, which is usually the words hentai and blank. I go on the PS4 storefront. I go on the Xbox storefront a lot. I check it at least like, a few times a week, like what's there. And I'm on the Switch storefront a lot. And it's like the Switch right now, I look at them like there's like 10 games released a day. And a lot of them look like garbage. But then there's other ones that are really, really interesting that it's almost becoming the new Steam, where it's like Steam, like, I don't even bother anymore, really. I try to look for a thumbnail that looks fun, because there's just so much garbage. And, like, I'll see a lot of shared games between the all three consoles. Like, trying to think of an example, but there's, like, this guy in a trucker hat, and he looks angry. That's the thumbnail.
Yeah.
And I see that on all three marketplaces, and I'm like, okay. But then it's like when a Gunman Clive... Do you know Gunman Clive?
I don't know Gunman Clive.
Yeah, you seem to be smiling. Like, yeah, I like that name, Gunman Clive.
I do like it.
Gunman Clive is an indie game, I'd say. But it was made by one guy, or maybe two guys, like his brother did the music. And it's just a little Western shoot-'em-up. Okay. A little like Contra. It has a sepia tone on everything. And just like kind of sketchiness. He released it on the 3DS for $2 and made a chart that said, I made all of my money on the 3DS. I made like almost nothing on the iOS store. Just recently released Gunman Clive HD 1 and 2. He made 2 Gunman Clives. And he released that on the Switch just recently, like 2 weeks ago or something. And it's like an incredible... And I think it's $5 for both games. And like there's multiple playable characters. You can play as like, the girl from, the girl from Wild Guns.
Okay.
He's just like in the little fancy lady dress.
Nice.
He's making a new game that's coming out now on all consoles called Mecha Sturmination.
That's not as good as Gunman Clive, I'm afraid.
You are a Contra-style man, and the entire level is a boss. It's a giant robot, and you have to figure out your way. The level is the boss, so you're constantly jumping on the boss because it's massive. It's like Shadow of the Colossus. It's 7 Colossi from Shadow of the Colossus all grouped together. And that's the level. And it's all in HD. It's all like, not a simple thing. And it's boss patterns, it's boss recognition. And now that he made some money on Gunman Clive, like he's making this. And I'm like... That is such a step up in production quality and ambition, because Gunman Clive is walking to the right, and shooting things like pew pew, and that's it. And this is like a whole other form. I'm like, that's getting dangerously close to what I would consider almost a B game. It's coming on all 3 consoles. It's Steam as well, I'm sure. It looks like it has a much bigger team. And I'm just like, wow, okay, is that where we are now? Or is it more like the Hellblade scenario where that looks like a AAA game, but it's short?
I think
it's
probably
cheaper.
I think probably the closest to what we have right now, apart from the THQ Nordic, is probably things like Extinction. Which was that Iron Galaxy?
Yeah, but they sold that as like a full price thing.
Yeah. And the problem with that was they similar to your Gunman Clive.
I think that was 505 as well.
Yeah. And I think similar to Gunman Clive, they cut their teeth on lots of cool little tiny things and doing ports of other games.
Yeah.
They made Dive Kick, didn't they?
Yeah.
Yeah. And so then they tried their hand at something bigger, and Extinction is...
And they took over the development of Killer Instinct. Like, Killer Instinct was already made, and they just kind of did their own stuff and did a good job, but like...
I think so, yeah.
Eve of...
It was Extinction.
Extinction. I thought it was Eve of Distinction. Extinction was like, as soon as I saw that, I'm like, that looks so generic.
Yeah.
Like, they're just big Shreks.
Yeah.
They're not even cool monster designs. Like, one reason why Attack on Titans got so popular is like, look at how fucking weird these monsters are. And I just saw that, I'm like, you never know. I thought Hellblade would fail, and it didn't.
Yeah.
And I was kind of like, this will probably fail, but I'd like to be wrong, and I was not wrong, and like, it didn't do well. 505 Games is like, wow, you were working with Microsoft on Killer Instinct, now you're working with 505 Games on a Shrek killing simulator. But that now that you mention that game, that did come out on PS4, Xbox, PC.
Indeed.
And it was like a weird price. It was like $50 or something, and it was just like, it was a game you could beat in like 3 hours or whatever, and it just had one thing. Yeah. Which was running up these monsters and killing this. And the mech game I mentioned earlier, like, considerably. It has it's still a 2.5D game. It's not like a 3D game, but I wanted to mention that one just because of that. And now, a game just got announced today, which is 3D Realms is let's make a new shooter on the Quake 1 engine. It's called Wrath. And it's just we are taking a developer that's composed of a bunch of Quake scene map makers and everything, and let's just make this. And I'm massively hyped for that. Dusk is another one, which is coming out on Switch soon, but it's also on Steam, and it's just Quake style first person shooter.
I've seen the screenshots,
and it's incredibly fun.
It's
really
actually
well
pretty
made.
for what it's trying to do.
It is, because you can put a Game Boy filter on it if you want to make it look like a Game Boy. And that's another weird space where I'm that's indie, but it's harkening back to what was AAA, which was Quake and Quake 2 and stuff. So that's a really interesting space. There's a lot of little pockets, we talked about the European publishers.
Yeah.
And there's that, but there's not going to be any more inversions made by Namco or
They're too high risk now. B tier used to be something that you could, throw people at. But I mean, again, the reason I used the example of Assassin's Creed is now, instead of it with Ubisoft previously, they would have had a development team sitting in the background with nothing to do. And they're like, well, come up with your own game and build it while we're making Assassin's Creed over here now.
Yeah.
And instead, the way that their teams are divided, it's okay, you'll be building assets for Assassin's Creed. While you have nothing to do, you're just the asset creator.
Yeah.
And so, what a lot of from again, using the idea of the B movie to A movie, there is very few times when there is a thing that someone will do in the meantime while they're constructing the bigger thing.
Yeah.
So
Raven Software, makers of Heretic, Hex, and Singularity,
great game.
Now just I think they either make assets or just work on the multiplayer of
they do
Call of
multiplayer.
Duty.
Yeah, they do a lot of multiplayer maps.
Oh.
Yeah. They also made the other good Wolfenstein game.
You mean Wolfenstein?
Yes.
Yeah, I don't know about that one.
Oh, I love that one.
Yeah, you would, but I that one always gets forgotten.
Yes.
Because it's always returned. It was either Wolfenstein, Return to Castle Wolfenstein, or Wolfenstein the New Order / Colossus, whatever. Raven's another one of those. I always thought about doing a series based on developers that were just really good. Bizarre Creations.
It's another great example.
Radical Entertainment, Prototype, and there's a lot of companies they made good games that just didn't sell and they're just gone. The Bizarre Creations. Do you want to talk about The Club?
Oh my god.
Do you not have a Peter Moore style tattoo on your arm where you just raise it and says just The Club? No? You don't?
No, I don't. I mean, The Club was a kind of accident. I was drunk in a Blockbusters.
Yeah.
And I just saw this.
As you usually wind up.
Yeah,
I'm drunk in a Blockbuster.
I mean, what else are you going to do on a Friday night?
Right.
I mean, you're not going to go home.
No.
So I basically saw this cover art for this game, and it just said The Club on it.
It's a bunch of graffiti of the people's faces and shit. But
it looks bad. It's not because there's a similar art style on the Sleeping Dogs cover where they do a montage of people's faces in this highly
with
stylized,
the logo in the middle.
Yeah, and it looks really good. The Club is that version, but really poorly done.
Yeah.
And I was like, what is this rubbish? And so I bought 2 copies. And just in case one of them broke or I fell asleep on it.
Gotta be careful.
Yeah. So then I ended up playing it the next day, and it's it's basically Bizarre Creations making a Project Gotham Racing, or but a shooter.
Yeah.
Where you're instead of having to do swerving around corners and do drifts and stuff like that, instead you're doing headshots and rolls,
jumping off the walls. And stuff.
Exactly, and trying to be as cool at killing people as possible. And it's got a kind of Trials HD feel to it as well.
Huh, yeah.
In the sense that to restart takes very little time. So if you mess up a run, it's only a few seconds to get right back into it and start again. And that kind of one more-ish. The fact that every single level and every single difficulty on every level had its own leaderboard. So it wasn't just, okay, so if you did it on easy, you were competing against everyone who was on easy, and everyone who was doing on the extreme, which I beat the entire game on every single difficulty, you were getting completely different scores based on that kind of stuff. And they put so much thought into it, and But it's just like every other Bizarre Creations game.
Kind of.
Just
Blur.
Yeah.
Blur. No, not Blur. James Bond Bloodstone is what killed them. They did that, and as soon as that was out, like EA just, you're gone.
Wasn't that Activision that axed them?
Sorry, yeah. EA used to have the James Bond license. Yeah, it was Activision. I wanted to end off on this. If there is a B and C tier game you'd want to get another shot, either HD re-release, sequel, remake, whatever, is there one you'd want to see? Like Bizarre, like The Club would be a good example because it like the developer's dead.
Yeah,
there'd be no chance. So is there anything like that you can think of?
Well, I mean, the thing for me is that when I look at it, if I would like The Club being a good example, the problem is I don't know who would make that game. Mm-hmm. So if I'd love to see The Club get a remake, but I'm like, okay, but what developer would come in and
would actually be able to do
that? I mean, I guess maybe Red Lynx, who does Trials, might be the people, but when they try and do shooting, you get that terrible Trials of the Blood Dragon.
How about Remedy? Remedy Software, Max Payne.
Maybe.
I don't think they would do it, but they could.
They've got the mechanical skills for it.
Yeah.
But actually, you mentioned one before and was very dismissive about it. And I was like, I'd love to see them make a sequel to that, and that's Brute Force.
Yes, okay.
I'd love to see Brute Force. A really good squad-based, 4 unique characters with their own skills in a squad-based tactics game in a shooter. And you could throw in, like, literally anyone. You could get IO to, like, bring back their Freedom Fighters.
Freedom Fighters!
You know, and make a Freedom Fighter-style Brute Force game.
You could have them do it, absolutely.
Yeah. Or you could get someone like the team who made made Bureau, XCOM the Bureau.
Jesus, right. Okay.
They could come in and make a Brute Force game and spin something out of that same kind of mechanics. Or, I mean, an obvious thing is the fact that the way that Brute Force characters were designed,
Lizard Man,
Lizard Man, Muscle Dude, and like
those were their actual names,
pretty much. There's so many people who could come up with some interesting ideas and I'd love to see someone because it was known as it's a third-person Halo.
Yeah, it was kind of pegged to be like, if you're not... Halo's in its off-season, the new game's not coming out, so play Brute Force.
Yeah. But it supported 4-player split screen when you need characters and abilities. There's hope for that somewhere.
I could see... I'm sure Microsoft still owns that, so I could see them doing something within the future. As for me, there's a cancel game that definitely was really, really far to completion, and even though it was published, not developed, but published by Nintendo, it fits this pretty clearly. Do you want to take any guesses? Anything?
No, I don't know. You're gonna have to.
Project Hammer on the Wii.
Oh yeah, I remember this.
So this was at E3. This was
that
playable.
Looked brilliant.
You were just a cyborg man with a giant hammer, and of course use the Wiimote to smash things. And it got really far into development. And there's a great video by Liam Robertson from Unseen 64. Just I talk to developers. They're just Nintendo Japan were you don't know what you're doing. They're no, I guess we don't. And they're just no, change it. A lot of people just left the company, came back, and then they just could never hammer down what they wanted to do. And I saw that, and this was at the age where I was a GameCube warrior. I love my GameCube so much. And then I kind of once I started playing stuff outside the GameCube spectrum, I was oh, the GameCube kind of sucks pretty hard comparatively to whatever all the other systems were offering. And bridging into the Wii, I was really excited for the Wii, and I was even oh, Red Steel, awesome, it's games that are speaking to me. And I love my Mario, but and then I saw Project Hammer. I'm oh, you're a big cyborg with a hammer, that's so cool. And brought me a little bit of Nano Breaker, or one of those, again, earlier PS2 Xbox games. And I would love it if Nintendo were ever to make a Wii Classic system.
Release what's left of the code of that game.
Because the only reason I say this is because they did it with Star Fox 2, and they released a Super Nintendo Classic. They put a not released game over there, and they even finished it up or whatever to make it more playable on that system. But I'm if there was ever to be a Wii Classic, I would love Project Hammer to be there. Bearing that, disaster Day of Crisis as well.
Yeah.
Do a port of that on the eShop, whatever, because that's another one that I'm just like, oh, that's such a B game. They never released it here.
Wouldn't it be great if they put Project Hammer on something like VR? Because then you could use the actual controllers.
You could probably do it.
And just basically have them swinging the hammers with the actual
Why not?
VR
Why not? I'm sure there's a VR game being made right now that's like Project that. Hammer. So, I think that covers every single B game ever made. I don't know about you.
Yeah, we've done it. Nailed it.
Thank you so much, Mr. Small. Is there any places you would want people to check you on the internet, or are you good?
I vaguely use it. I'm on Twitter at Badger Commander.
Right.
And I write articles for probably NeoGAF's least favourite website called Game Critics.
Right.
Most famous for giving the new God of War 7.5 out of 10, which then resulted in people from the new NeoGAF demanding the editor at our website's resignation.
To step down?
Yeah, they were actually emailing Sony demanding that Sony demand his blood. And I write for them. So
okay, cool.
if you wanna come and see my amazing review of Gene Rain, which I was not allowed to give 9.5 out of 10 because my editor was like, I have just dealt with this shit.
I can't in good conscience.
He's like, we already had to deal with the shit from God of War. If you give this a 9.5, like people will find out.
But you didn't review God of War.
No, but I reviewed Gene Rain.
No, but like
they won't care.
Okay, they won't care.
I see. They'll just be like, they will find where this AJ Small lives and like hunt him down and be like, how dare you?
All right, that's cool. Thank you so much for having this conversation. A long time coming.
Indeed.
I think we got a lot of B and C tier crumbs off our chest. If you know if any other subjects or guests I could have on Mumbling Bat, let me know in the comments or shoot me a frank and professional email to McMuscles@gmail.com, and we will hopefully see you next time.
Bye.